Chapter 2085. When Tsang-ing followed beside Emo-chang, he had always been indifferent. No matter how major the matter was, it would not affect him at all. He always gave off the feeling of an otherworldly expert, as if even if the sky collapsed, he would not be affected at all. Now that the layer of green scales on his palm had shattered, the goshawk could no longer maintain his calm demeanor. His heart, which was as calm as an ancient well, was stirred up as if a huge rock had been thrown into the calm water, causing waves in the sky. He was not calm at all. His scale armor was a sub-divine tool. Although it wasn't a true divine tool, it wasn't much weaker than a divine tool. But now, it was actually broken by Yi Shiwen. If the person who shattered the scale were a supreme divine king who stood within the top 10 of the divine king's level, Tsang-ing would not have been so shocked. This was because it was rumored that experts at that level could surpass major cultivation realms and contend against primordial realm experts. They even possessed the heaven-defying ability to kill primordial realm experts. They were extremely powerful. However, the person who had shattered the scale was a woman who was only an early divine king. How could Tsang-ing not be shocked? However, after his shock, he felt great joy and intense desire. As a result, Tsang-ing valued Kea even more than Xiaoman, who was protected by the world. I have to capture this woman and understand the secrets of her usage of laws. I have to obtain a secret technique, like that no matter what. Tsang-ing secretly made up his mind. He struck out with his full strength in an attempt to capture Kea. However, although Kea's cultivation was nowhere near as great as Tsang-ing's, his battle prowess was not much weaker than Tsang-ing's due to his ingenious usage of laws. Moreover, he also had Jinshin's assistance. With the two of them working together, even a divine king like Tsang-ing was unable to do anything to Jinshin and Kea. Moreover, a large part of the reason why Tsang-ing had displayed such heaven-defying strength earlier was because he possessed the Azure Pung Scale, a sub-god artifact that had surpassed supreme quality saint artifacts. Now that the Azure Pung Scale had shattered, it affected his battle prowess to a certain extent. Seeing how Jinshin and Kea were getting closer and closer to the 8th floor, Tsang-ing secretly panicked. Afterwards, he suddenly looked at Mr. Shu behind him and called out, "Keep Jinshin busy for me. I'll deal with this woman. Once I capture her, I'll help you deal with Jinshin." Behind him, Mr. Shu had mostly recovered from his wounds after ingesting the god-tier healing pills. When he heard Tsang-ing's words, he charged up without any hesitation and began to engage in an intense battle with Jinshin with the cataclysmic onyx fan. Mr. Shu had already understood the situation. Neither he nor Tsang-ing could deal with Jinshin and Kea on their own. Only by working together could they achieve their objective. Jinshin was kept busy by Mr. Shu, while Kea dealt with Tsang-ing's storm-like attacks all by himself. He immediately felt the pressure multiply and become more and more strained. Even with that being the case, it would not be easy for Tsang-ing to capture Kea. The battle between the 4 supreme divine kings had already reached its climax. The 4 of them did not hold back at all, using their full strength. Their battle caused the surroundings to darken and the sun to dim. It shook up the entire 9th floor. Soon after their battle began, Mr. Shu was the first to show signs of exhaustion. Using the god artifact for so long consumed his origin energy at an extremely rapid rate. Coupled with the fact that he had yet to recover from his wounds, he was unable to last much longer. On the other hand, Jinshin was even more heavily injured than Mr. Shu. He was covered in blood and had even been struck by the cataclysmic onyx fan. He was covered in wounds, and his chaotic blood spurted into the air, but his battle prowess did not decrease at all. He seemed like a human-shaped beast that could not be defeated no matter what. Boom! Finally, after a violent collision, Mr. Shu was blown away by Jinshin's sword. Without enough origin energy to support it, the cataclysmic onyx fan in his hand dimmed. Even though Mr. Shu had ingested pills to recover his origin energy, His rate of recovery was nowhere near as fast as the consumption of a god artifact. Without Mr. Shu bothering him, Jianqin immediately charged towards Cang. He began to battle with Cang, relieving the pressure on Kea. "Cang, I've done my best. It's up to you now," Mr. Shu said from afar. He seemed rather dispirited. This battle had dealt a huge blow to him. As a peak divine king, he had actually lost to an early divine king even with a god artifact in hand. This made him feel humiliated. In reality, it was not that Mr. Shu was weaker than Jianqin. It was just that he did not have a tough body like Jianqin's, nor did he have a powerful source of energy like chaotic force. Jianqin is injured. He won't be able to last much longer. Everyone attack together. I only want this woman. Everything on Jianqin will belong to you, Cang called out. He wanted to use everyone's strength to deal with Jianqin and Kea. This was because Jianqin and Kea were working together. He really did not have the opportunity to capture Kea alive. However, Song Ying's instigation did not work. There were over 200 divine kings gathered here, and all of them coveted Jianqin's items. However, none of them were willing to become Jianqin's first target after understanding how powerful Jianqin was. At this moment, a dazzling streak of light shot over from afar. It moved extremely quickly, like a streak of light. It flew straight over. It was a flying sword that was at least 10 meters long. The sword light flickered and blossomed with a light as strong as the scorching sun, rendering the pitch-black night sky as bright as day. A young man in golden robes stood on the flying sword. He only seemed to be in his 20s, and he was extremely handsome. His face was chiseled and filled with coldness. Powerful sword intent revolved around him. He was an expert of the laws of the sword. He had already reached the peak of divine king. Sword intent gathered around him without dispersing. It seemed to form a great sword. The young man in golden robes flew over on his sword. In the end, he stopped several kilometers away and looked at Jianqin's group of 3. Afterwards, he glanced at the several hundred divine kings who were tailing Jianqin's group coldly. He said emotionlessly, "I heard that a girl who has been protected by the world has appeared on the 9th floor. Is that true?" Many god kings shivered inside when they heard that. They could already tell that the golden-robed young man had probably come down from the 10th floor from what he had said. Seeing how no one answered him, the young man's face sank slightly. With a cold snort, a supreme presence radiated from him. With a powerful sword intent that could engulf the surroundings, it engulfed the god kings in an overwhelming manner. Chapter 2086. Did none of you hear this king's words? The golden-robed young man's tone was icy, and his face was as cold as ice. He glanced sharply at the divine king. His expression was arrogant, as if he did not take anyone seriously. "Gongzheng, you've come at just the right time. The girl you spoke of is indeed true. She's currently with Jianqin. This person is Jianqin. If you're interested in that girl, hurry up and take action. Otherwise, if Jianqin escapes from the Azure Poseidon Palace, things will become troublesome." Cang spoke at the right time. His voice was old but powerful. However, when the divine king in the surroundings heard the name Gongzheng from him, many of their expressions changed. Their gazes toward the golden-robed young man changed drastically. Their gazes were filled with shock and dread. Could he be the divine king on the divine king's throne, Gongzheng? It said that Gongzheng is the successor of the absolute sword lineage. People call him the absolute sword little heavenly king. He's extremely powerful. Ever since he began cultivating, he's never been defeated by anyone at the same cultivation level. He's ranked 900 on the divine king's throne. I never thought that he would be the divine king, Gongzheng. As expected of the successor of the absolute sword lineage, he really is extremely cold. You can tell with a single glance that he's a vicious and merciless person. Gongzheng has clearly come for Jianqin. No matter how heaven-defying Jianqin is, his cultivation is still lacking. He has no chance against Gongzheng. Many divine kings discussed spiritedly. Many of them had lived for a very long time, so they clearly remembered every name on the divine king's throne. As a result, when they heard the name Gongzheng, they immediately recalled a lot of information about him. Gongzheng's come at just the right time. Jianchen, let's see how you escape now. Gongzheng's ranking on the divine king's throne is even higher than Sanying's. The fifth prince of the Sky dynasty secretly rejoiced as well. He thought that Gongzheng had come at just the right time. On the other hand, Yun Xian and Yun Lianqing began to worry for Jianchen once again. Just Song Ying alone required Jianchen and Kea to work together to contend against him. Now that Gongzheng, who was ranked much higher than Song Ying, had come, how could Jianchen and the others resist? Gongzheng's gaze focused on Jianchen as he said arrogantly, "I'm not interested in attacking you. You'd better hand over that little girl." Gongzheng appeared cold, but in reality he was not calm inside. He could naturally tell that Jianchen and Kea's cultivation levels were not high. They had only just entered the Divine King realm, yet they could fight so intensely against a supreme Divine King. This left him extremely shocked. Even with the entire Saints world in perspective, there were only a handful of such monstrous geniuses. Yet he had encountered two of them all at once. Jianchen's heart suddenly sank as well. What he worried about the most was that the more time passed, the more powerful people would be drawn over. Unfortunately, he and Kea were constantly entangled with Song Ying and Mr. Xu, so they were unable to break free. In the end, what he dreaded the most still happened. Gongzheng was very powerful. He had already heard that Gongzheng ranked even higher than Song Ying on the Divine King's throne. If Gongzheng took part in the battle, the situation would not be optimistic at all. However, not long after Gongzheng's voice sounded, 3 extremely powerful auras were transmitted over from the distant horizon. They were like huge waves that wreaked havoc in the sky as they rapidly approached this place. Even though they had yet to see their figures, one could tell from their auras that they were not inferior to Song Ying and Gongzheng in the slightest. It's the Supreme Divine King again. Heavens! Has the Supreme Divine Kings gathered here? 3 Divine Kings have come all of a sudden. That's a total of 5 Divine Kings. I've never seen so many Supreme Divine Kings gathered together in my life. They're not here for the God-tier heavenly resources. They're here for the girl. Jianchen is dead for sure this time. Many Divine Kings were shocked in the surroundings. Was this a gathering of Supreme Divine Kings? Jianchen and Kea became extremely stern. They felt unprecedented pressure from the gathering of 5 Divine Kings. The situation was becoming worse and worse for them. We can't waste any more time, or we really won't be able to leave. Jianchen's face turned cold as he made up his mind. At the same time, Gongzheng's face changed slightly as well. He thought, it's them. I never thought they'd come down from the 10th floor as well. No, the girl can end up in their hands. With that, Gongzheng struck out decisively. The flying sword beneath him flew into his hand as a streak of light. Wielding the sword in one hand, he directly slashed at Jianchen like a supreme god of the sword. Immediately, the sword shone with blinding light. A huge streak of light that was several hundred meters long shot through the air, shooting towards Jianchen with lightning speed. The sword Qi possessed a concept that symbolized destruction and made people feel despair. It affected the minds of many divine kings in the surroundings, making their wills waver. This was the mysteries of the absolute sword way. If people with weak wills faced the sword Qi, it would be very difficult for them to even think about resisting under the influence of the mysteries of the absolute sword way. Jianchen's will was as tough as steel. He did not waver at all. He used the Tai sword technique and condensed sword Qi around him. He transformed into a sword and shot out as a streak of light. Boom! The two of them collided with a loud sound. Sword Qi shot out in all directions. Gong Zheng's sword qi was dispersed by Jianqin, while Jianqin's sword qi dimmed. He paid the price of a few bone-deep wounds on his body as he continued forward. He directly charged towards Gong Zheng. His presence was shocking and unstoppable. You still want to resist? Looks like I'll have to cripple you first before capturing you. Gong Zheng's eyes were cold, and his voice was extremely frigid. The laws of the sword condensed around him, causing him to shine with blinding light. He was prepared to use his full strength and end the battle quickly. This was because he needed to obtain the girl from Jianqin before the three of them arrived. Time was of the essence to him. Jianqin had already approached Gong Zheng. Suddenly, a supreme sword intent that was enough to make the world tremble radiated from him. A palm-sized, silver-white sword qi silently appeared above Jianqin's head. The sword qi was small, but it was extremely terrifying. It possessed earth-shaking power, causing the expressions of all the divine kings present to change drastically as they shivered inside. Even a supreme overgod like Gong Zheng revealed a different expression at that moment. He struggled to remain composed. This was because he could sense a great threat from the sword qi. The threat was so great that it was unprecedented, making his soul tremble. Song Ying, who fought against Kea, shivered inside as well. He suddenly looked at Jianqin, and his old face was filled with shock. Swish! It was also at this moment that there was a flash of intense light. The profound sword qi that hovered above Jianqin's head had already shot out. It moved extremely quickly, completely surpassing the speed of lightning. It seemed like it could move through space, ignoring the distance between them. It directly shot towards Gong Zheng, arriving before his forehead in a single instance. Gong Zheng paled in shock. His eyes narrowed to the size of a needle in a single instance, becoming silver white. They reflected the dazzling light from the profound sword qi. Chapter 2087. The profound sword qi was just too fast. It was so fast that even he was unable to react in time. All he could do was watch as the finger-sized profound sword qi approached his forehead at an unbelievable speed. Spurt! The profound sword qi pierced through Gong Zheng's layers of protective light like a hot knife through butter. It stabbed into his forehead and struck his soul. Immediately, a tearing pain appeared in Gong Zheng's soul, causing him to cry out miserably, uncontrollably. He even struggled to maintain the ability to hover in the air. He struggled as he fell straight down from the sky, smashing into the ground heavily. Gong Zheng was the supreme divine king below the divine king. Not only was his strength great, but his soul was as well. He did not die after taking on Jianqin's profound sword qi. He was still alive. However, his soul was already heavily injured. It would be difficult for him to recover in a short amount of time, so he no longer had the ability to battle. Jianqin originally wanted to pursue and kill Gong Zheng in a single stroke, because Gong Zheng was unable to fight back at all in his current state. Let alone the divine king. Even an overgod could kill him. However, Jianqin was forced to give up on killing Gong Zheng when he saw the three powerful presences rapidly approaching him in the distance. Even though killing Gong Zheng would only take a split second, that split second was the difference between life and death to him. Song Ying had personally witnessed Gong Zheng's fate from nearby. His face paled slightly as well. His gaze towards Jianqin was filled with extremely deep fear. However, in the next moment, Song Ying's eyes suddenly narrowed as fear filled his face. This was because he saw a second strand of profound sword qi above Jianqin's head. By the time Jianqin looked over, the second strand of profound sword qi had already been aimed at him. Gong Zheng's fate was still fresh in Song Ying's mind. His fear for the profound sword qi had basically reached a level of fear, or even terror. Seeing how Jianqin was about to shoot the second strand of profound sword qi at him, he did not hesitate at all. He basically shot off into the distance, instinctively. Azure light flickered on his body as he used his speed, arriving 10,000 kilometers away in a single instance. He stared at Jianqin from 10,000 kilometers away. He was filled with fear and caution, ready to flee at any time. Jianqin originally wanted to directly shoot out the second strand of profound sword qi to heavily injured Song Ying. But when he saw that Song Ying had already retreated and no longer obstructing him, he was naturally happy to see this. He immediately stowed the second strand of profound sword qi away and left with Kea. Originally, he did not want to use the profound sword qi as much as possible. This was because every time he used a strand of profound sword qi, it would deplete a large amount of the power of his soul, which would indirectly affect his battle prowess. Song Ying and Mr. Xu were not the only divine king that were their opponents. There were also the many people gathered here who were after the treasures. As a result, he needed to preserve some strength to deal with the divine king in the surroundings as he dealt with Song Ying and Mr. Xu. However, Jianqin felt a great sense of danger from the gathering of several divine king. He had no choice but to use the profound sword qi. Even though he had only shot out a strand of profound sword qi, it had depleted almost a third of the power of Jianqin's soul. He immediately began to feel faint. However, the depletion of a single strand of profound sword qi was not enough to affect Jianqin too much. Using this short amount of time, Jianqin and Kea quickly flew off into the distance. At the same time, the three powerful experts had arrived. Their bodies were enveloped by a layer of dense light of laws, making their figures indistinctly discernible. It was impossible to see them clearly in the haze. It was only possible to tell from their blurry figures that they were two women and one man. As soon as they arrived, a terrifying pressure permeated the surroundings, blanketing the surroundings. Many of the weaker divine king felt like they were suffocating, as if a boulder was pressing down on their chests, making it difficult for them to breathe. The three of them were no weaker than Song Ying and Gongzheng. They were also divine kings that were below the divine king. They were extremely powerful. As soon as the three supreme god kings arrived, they all looked at Gongzheng, who constantly struggled on the ground as he clutched his head and howled out in pain. Their faces all changed when they saw this. Gongzheng's soul is heavily injured. I can sense that at least half of it has dispersed. It's impossible for him to recover in a short amount of time, said one of the three. Among the three people, a woman spoke. Her voice was as beautiful as the heavens, and it made people want to see her true appearance. Gongzheng also came down from the 10th floor. Even if he got here before us, he wouldn't be much faster than us. Just who is this person that can heavily injure Gongzheng in such a short amount of time? The second woman said. Her voice was as pleasant as music, and it was stern. The person who injured Gongzheng is called Jianqin. At this moment, Song Ying returned from afar. His face was stern as he said, Jianqin knows an extremely powerful secret technique. He can send out a strand of sword qi that's only the size of a finger. The sword qi is extremely powerful and extremely fast. It specializes in attacking the soul, making it impossible to defend against. Gongzheng was injured by Jianqin's secret technique. Afterwards, Song Ying told the three of them some simple information, including the fact that Xiaoman, who was protected by the world, was by Jianqin's side. He did not hide anything at all. After witnessing the power of the profound sword qi, Song Ying truly understood Jianqin's strength. He knew that he could not deal with Jianqin alone. He could only work with the other divine kings. That Jianqin's secret technique really is powerful to be able to injure Gongzheng to such a state in a single exchange. However, the more powerful the secret technique, the greater the price to use it. As a result, I'm certain that he can only use this secret technique a few times. As long as we're careful, it's not like we can't avoid it, said the man among the three divine kings. His voice was firm and forceful. No matter how powerful that Jianqin is, we need to stop him and take back the girl. However, Jianqin isn't that easy to deal with. Why don't we work together?" suggested the woman who spoke first. She looked at the two people who had come with her, and Song Ing. "Sure. Once we take back the girl, the four of us will share her secrets," said the man. Very soon, the four of them came to an agreement. They worked together and pursued in the direction that Jianchen had fled in. During this time, people constantly joined in. Not only were there many regular god kings, but even 3 supreme god kings from the god king's throne had hurried over as well. Chapter 2088. At the same time, the supreme god kings who came later brought a piece of news. Not only did many people on the 10th floor learn that a girl protected by the world had appeared on the 9th floor, but even the experts on the 11th floor had received the news. Now, the news was being spread to the 12th floor. In short, Xiao Man's existence had shaken up the entire Tsang Poseidon Palace. Some of the more ordinary divine kings who were not particularly powerful became interested in Jianchen's chaotic prime legacy and the many god-tier heavenly resources in the divine medicinal garden. As for the divine kings, they all targeted Xiao Man. All the supreme god kings thought about how Xiao Man could receive the protection of the world. They came up with various possible conclusions. Under the pursuit of the divine kings, Jianchen and Kea finally managed to escape from the 9th floor successfully. They returned to the 8th floor of the Tsang Poseidon Palace. The 8th floor was an incomparably massive world of volcanoes. Beneath his feet was an endless stretch of volcanoes and a sea of fiery red lava that exuded a terrifyingly high temperature. The lava was terrifyingly hot, where it could easily melt supreme quality saint artifacts. Even god artifacts of lower quality would not be able to last for too long in the lava. It was extremely terrifying, and in this lava there were black stones of different sizes. They were like islands that floated in the lava sea. They never melted or sank, constantly withstanding the terrifying heat of the lava. The black rocks were all god-tier materials, Pernight, Oregon. Moreover, they were high-quality god-tier materials. They were extremely precious, enough to make countless people envious. However, including the Divine King, no one could take away even a tiny piece. Right now, our only path of retreat is this sea of lava. Jianchen hovered in the air as he stared at the lava below sternly. The lava was very terrifying. It possessed the power to incinerate the world. When he was at the 11th layer of the chaotic body, he could not even approach the sea of lava. He could only watch from afar. Now, even though he had reached the 12th layer of the chaotic body, he was not completely confident that he could endure the might of the lava with his body. Quickly enter the pagoda. This pagoda should be able to ensure our safety in the lava. Jianchen immediately took out the Anita Tower. It suddenly expanded under his control, hovering in the air. The damaged door to the tower had already been opened, urging Kea on. Kea knew that time was tight. Without any hesitation, he immediately wanted to enter the tower. However, at this moment, a terrifying pulse of energy appeared behind him. A huge staff extended over from afar. It was several dozen kilometers long, smashing towards Jianchen with terrifying force. A supreme divine king had already chased Jianchen from the 9th floor to the 8th floor. He attacked Jianchen without any hesitation at all. A god artifact! Jianchen's face changed slightly. He recognized the staff in a single instance. It was also a god artifact. Moreover, since the wielder of the god artifact was a true divine king, the power the god artifact could unleash was far greater than Mr. Shu's. Jianchen was stern. He circulated his chaotic force and suddenly stabbed out with his sword to block the staff. Boom! Jianchen's body violently trembled. The power within the staff was far greater than he had imagined. At that moment, he felt like he had lost all feeling in his right arm. A supreme force spread through his arm, spreading throughout his body. He felt like all his bones were about to shatter. Suddenly, an azure streak of light shot through the air. A flying sword shot towards Kea with a long azure tail. 5 more powerful attacks followed closely behind the streak of light, targeting Jianqin and Kea. The 7 divine kings had already chased down from the 9th floor. They attacked mercilessly. Behind the 7 of them was a large group of divine kings of varying strength. At this moment, they were scattered, surrounding Jianqin and Kea. Jianqin became extremely stern. The attacks from these divine kings were just too powerful. Even with his chaotic body, he needed to avoid them when they worked together, let alone the fact that some of them even possessed god artifacts. However, he was unable to retreat or dodge. Without any other choice, he could only move the Inata tower before him to block the attacks. Boom! With a deafening rumble, the attacks from the divine kings all landed on the Inata tower. The terrifying storm of energy caused the lava below to churn and many volcanoes in the surroundings to erupt on the spot. The Inata tower hovered in the air without moving at all. The attacks from the divine kings were indeed very terrifying, but they were nowhere close to shaking up the Inata tower. "Get in!" Jianqin called out. The situation was urgent, so he directly grabbed Kea's shoulder roughly and tossed Kea into the Inata tower. At this moment, the 7 supreme overgods had already approached, surrounding Jianqin. Every single one of them radiated with terrifying presences that surged into the clouds. They were extremely powerful. "Jianqin, we only want the girl. Hand over the girl, and we won't make things difficult for you," said a woman from the 7 of them. Her voice was cold, and her voice was dignified. The 7 of them maintained a certain distance from Jianqin. They were all cautious and filled with caution. Clearly, they were guarding against Jianqin's profound sword chi. However, the 7 of them were not united. They did not belong to a small group. As the woman spoke, a cold-faced man in black clothes did not wait for Jianqin's reply at all. He swung the black metal rod in his hand several kilometers away, and the rod suddenly expanded to 10 kilometers long. It gave off the might of a god artifact as it struck towards Jianqin mercilessly with tremendous energy. A clansman of my by clan was killed by him in the divine medicinal garden. "Regardless of whether he hands over the little girl or not, he must die," said the black-clothed man with the iron rod coldly. He was filled with killing intent. A cold light flashed through Jianqin's eyes. He did not use the Inata tower to block the strike. Instead, he used a second strand of profound sword chi without any hesitation. As soon as the second strand of profound sword chi appeared, it turned into a dazzling streak of white light. It radiated with earth-shaking sword intent as it shot towards the black-clothed man with lightning-like speed. As soon as the profound sword chi appeared, the supreme divine kings all became fearful. Even though the profound sword chi was not directed at them, they did not dare to be careless. They had already maintained a distance of several kilometers from Jianqin, so they could not help but retreat even further. Song Ying, who had personally witnessed the power of the profound sword chi, became even more fearful. With a flash, he retreated to 100 kilometers away. The eyes of the black-clothed man suddenly narrowed as well. The god artifact that had originally struck towards Jianqin immediately changed its trajectory. He wanted to disperse the profound sword chi as he retreated. However, the profound sword chi was just too fast. It had completely broken through the distance between them. Even though they were several kilometers apart, the profound sword chi was only inches away. There was no distance to speak of at all. He did not have time to defend himself with his metal rod. At that critical moment, a set of armor appeared on the black-clothed man, enveloping him completely. This was a supreme quality saint artifact. He wanted to use it to defend against the profound sword chi. However, the profound sword chi was no ordinary sword chi. It was a sword technique created by the old master of the sword spirits. It was a peak god-tier sword technique that had stolen the mysteries of the world. It was condensed from the laws of the sword and his vital energies, so its attacks were extraordinary. It directly ignored the supreme quality saint artifact and pierced through the black-clothed man's armor, stabbing his soul. Arg! The black-clothed man could not help but cry out miserably. His soul had become unimaginably injured in a single moment. He felt like his soul was being ripped apart as he fell from the sky. Just when the black-clothed man was about to fall into the lava below, a divine king of the Bai clan immediately flew over from behind and caught him. Chapter 2089. Jianshan's body shook as well. First, he had engaged in a series of battles, and now he had used 2 strands of profound sword qi. The power of his soul was severely depleted, and the dizziness in his head became even more intense. Suddenly, a terrifying black wind swept over, turning into terrifying blades of wind that revolved around Jianshan. They left behind bone-deep wounds on his body. Mr. Shu had also arrived on the 8th floor. He stood in the distance and used the origin energy he had just recovered to power the cataclysmic onyx fan. He used this opportunity to attack Jianshan. At the same time, he called out, "Jianshan is already very weak. I'm certain that he can't use a 3rd strand of sword qi like that. Everyone, why don't you do something?" Mr. Shu naturally hoped that Jianshan would die here. The battle prowess Jianshan had displayed was just too terrifying, enough to make Mr. Shu shiver. If he did not die today, he would definitely become a great problem for the Sky Empire. The 6 divine kings struck out together, attacking Jianshan. Surging ripples of energy wreaked havoc in the surroundings, causing the lava below to surge into the sky. Many volcanoes erupted, spraying lava and fire divine crystals into the sky. At that moment, Jianshan was heavily injured. Blood spurted from his mouth as his chaotic blood splattered across the sky. If it were not for his chaotic body, he probably would have died long ago. Arg! Jianshan bellowed out as his hair ruffled despite the lack of wind. He seemed to have gone mad as he struck out with everything he had, fighting the 6 of them alone. Under the attacks of the 6 supreme god kings, he did not have the time to enter the Anata Tower at all. He wanted to control the Anata Tower to fight against his enemies, but under the seal of the Nirvanic Immortal Exalt, the power that the Anata Tower could unleash was limited. If it was used to destroy the formations of the divine medicinal garden, it would be of some use, but against these supreme god kings who had gone through countless battles, it was unable to pose any substantial threat. Heavens, 6 peerless divine kings are attacking at the same time, and he can still hold on for a while without dying instantly. This Jianshan is really too tenacious. After this battle, even if Jianshan dies here, his name will be remembered by many. In the surroundings, the several hundred divine king who had personally witnessed this desperate battle couldn't help but gasp in shock. Jianshan's entire body was bathed in blood. The wounds on his body were sinister and terrifying. His chest had been pierced through, and there was a transparent hole in it. His injuries were extremely severe. Pooh! A long sword pierced through Jianshan's waist at lightning speed, piercing through his entire body. As for Jianshan, he stabbed the supreme quality saint artifact in his hand into the throat of a divine king, almost cutting off the divine king's head. Under the encirclement of the 6 divine kings, Jianshan had nowhere to run. He could only fight to the death. Under such dire circumstances, he unleashed all his potential. His battle prowess was extraordinary, and he actually managed to injure the 6 divine kings. Suddenly, an evil presence radiated from Jianshan. Jianshan's eyes had actually become blood red at some point in time. Even his long, black hair turned red at a visible rate, as if it had been dyed in blood. Jianshan was injured one after another. Coupled with the fact that the power of his soul was severely depleted, he finally lost control of the evil power within him. The evil power replaced his mind and took control of his body, causing him to go insane. Immediately, an aura filled with violence and destruction radiated from Jianshan. A faint, red mist surrounded Jianshan. The aura was so evil that it caused the expressions of many divine kings in the surroundings to change. Even the 6 divine kings froze. After going insane, Jianshan was clearly even more terrifying. He did not know pain, nor did he fear death. He was like a god of death who only lived for slaughter and destruction. A blood-red mist permeated his surroundings as he controlled an extremely evil power to battle everywhere. He's actually devouring my origin energy and the power of laws. How is this possible? What kind of evil power is this? It can even devour the power of laws. This is impossible. As soon as they fought Jianshin, the 6 divine kings all cried out. Their faces were filled with fear. Naturally, they did not know that after going insane, Jianshin seemed to have become another evil spirit. What he used was the power of an evil spirit. This evil spirit was known as a calamity of the world. It was created specifically for destruction. It could devour everything, including the laws of the world and thousands of miniature worlds. It was extremely terrifying. Quick, use your full strength and kill him. A divine king called out. The evil power that Jianshin used right now made all of them shiver. Immediately, the 6 divine kings struck out with their full strength. Coupled with Mr. Shu's assistance, they knocked the unconscious Jianshin out of the sky. He directly fell into the lava below and was swallowed by the lava in the end. However, the 6 of them paid a certain price as well. They were injured by Jianshin after going insane, so they were all in horrible shape. They were injured to varying degrees. The Inata tower that hovered in the air had lost Jianshin's control, so it fell out of the sky by itself. A gleam of light flashed through Song Ying's eyes when he saw the tower. He arrived beside it in a flash, wanting to take it away. However, his face changed very soon. The Inata tower was just too heavy. Not only was he unable to stop the tower from falling with his strength, but he was even dragged into the lava with the tower. Song Ying knew that Kea and Xiao Man were in the Inata tower. Once the tower fell into the lava, he would no longer have any chance to learn the secret technique of using laws from Kea. He immediately called out, "Quick, control the tower. The girl you want is in there. Don't let her fall down." The other 5 divine kings did not hesitate at all. They arrived below the Inata tower in a flash and placed their hands on the bottom of the tower in an attempt to stop it from falling. However, the result left all of them astounded. Just the weight of the tower was enough to make them, supreme god kings, feel like they were unable to resist it. Even when the 6 of them worked together, they were still unable to stop the Inata tower from falling. Instead, they were pressed down by the Inata tower, plummeting towards the lava below. What level of god artifact is this tower? Why is it so heavy? The 6 divine kings paled in shock. Seeing how they were getting closer and closer to the lava below, they could only give up in the end. They all flew out from the bottom of the Inata tower. In the end, the damaged Inata tower fell into the churning lava below under everyone's gazes. No one could stop it. We spent so much effort to kill Jianshin, but I never thought it would all be for nothing in the end. We got nothing. The 6 divine kings hovered in the air as they stared at the churning lava below in a daze. They sighed. The lava below was extremely terrifying. Even infinite primes did not dare to go down there, let alone them. God artifacts of lower grades would melt. So in their eyes, there was no hope of retrieving the Inata tower now that it had fallen into the lava. As a matter of fact, the tower would melt and become a part of the lava before long. Chapter 2090. Sigh, Jianshin has only just reached the level of Divine King. Yet he's already on par with the Supreme Divine King. If he's given enough time and reaches late Divine King, who in the Divine King realm would be his opponent. If Jianshin had the cultivation of a peak Divine King, he would probably be able to directly become the strongest Divine King. Killing primordial realm experts would be a piece of cake for him. Jianshin is just too powerful. Including Gongzheng, there were a total of 8 divine kings. In the end, 2 of them were heavily injured, while the remaining 6 were injured to varying degrees. A divine king who had yet to truly rise up has died just like that. What a pity! What a pity! Although the battle had ended on the 8th floor of the Azure Poseidon Palace, the divine kings gathered there refused to leave. They all gazed at where Jianqin had fallen into the lava as they shook their heads and sighed. Jianqin was already dead. This was an indisputable fact in everyone's eyes. Even though they had not seen his corpse and no one had personally witnessed Jianqin's soul being wiped out, he had fallen into the lava, so there was no chance of him surviving. Nearby, the fifth prince of the Sky Empire was overjoyed. He finally felt like a burden had been lifted from his heart. Yunqin, who stood behind the fifth prince, sank into a long period of silence. She was in low spirits. The divine kings of the Yun family all stared at where Jianqin had fallen as well. They were filled with sighs and pity. Jianqin had only just become a divine king, yet he was already able to fight against a supreme divine king to such an extent. With his unrivaled battle prowess, he should have become renowned throughout the saints' world and become a resplendent star that shook up the entire world. He should have enjoyed a supreme status, yet he had experienced a battle where his cultivation was completely unequal, dying here in the end. They all felt pity over this. Before long, another divine king arrived on the 8th floor. When they learnt about what had happened, many of them sighed. They felt pity over the death of a prodigy like Jianqin. The Azure Poseidon Palace had a total of 12 floors. As the highest floor, the 12th floor was the most important place in the entire Poseidon Palace. This was because the legacies of the 4 primordial realm experts of the Taoist sect of Neptunia were all placed on the 12th floor. The 12th floor was a place that everyone yearned for, yet it was also a place that countless people feared. Even a few supreme divine kings feared the 12th floor very deeply. They were unwilling to set foot there so easily. It was not because the 12th floor was filled with terrifying traps of death. Instead, it was because terrifying divine kings would enter the 12th floor whenever the Azure Poseidon Palace opened. Before these divine kings, even infinite primes faced the danger of dying. Even supreme divine kings felt tremendous pressure before people like them. They did not want to face them. The 12th floor of the Azure Poseidon Palace was a world of mountains and rivers. However, the entire world was gloomy now. Only a huge moon hung high in the sky, shining down with pure and gentle moonlight. 4 stone statues stood there. Every single one of them represented a grand prime of the Taoist sect of Neptunia in the past. The 4 statues represented the 4 grand primes of the Taoist sect of Neptunia, as well as the 4 great legacies. Over the countless years, one of the 4 legacies had already chosen a master, so one of the statues was dim and did not give off any pulses of energy at all. It was unlike the other 3 statues, which were enveloped by a hazy glow and gave off powerful pulses of energy. Over 100 divine kings sat around the 3 statues. They all had their eyes closed, meditating like monks. They attempted to connect with the statues and obtain their recognition to obtain the Grand Prime's legacy. Not all of these people were supreme divine kings. There were a few regular divine kings who took the risk and ascended to the 12th floor under great mental pressure. They attempted to obtain the favor of the heavens and the favor of the Grand Primes of the Taoist sect of Neptunia, so that they could obtain their legacies and rise up. I've just received news that a girl has appeared on the 9th floor. She's not powerful, only at the mortal realm, but she seems to be protected by the power of the world. Even the divine king failed to injure her. At this moment, a piece of news appeared on the 12th floor, causing many divine kings to open their eyes. The old man has never heard of anyone being protected by the world after entering the Poseidon Palace. Something has just happened to the Poseidon Palace. The Neptunian moon that has vanished for a very long time has reappeared, and now a girl has been protected by the world. Is there a connection between the two? Countless years ago, Supreme Expert predicted that when the Neptunian moon reappeared, something great would happen to the Poseidon Palace. However, even those supreme experts were unable to predict whether the change would be good or bad, or what it would be. Now that something has happened to the Poseidon Palace, there's news of a girl being protected by the world. Is the change in the Poseidon Palace connected to the girl? A series of discussions rang out on the 12th floor. Many divine kings made various guesses, coming to many different conclusions. However, this kind of news was clearly not enough to attract the attention of everyone present. There were still a dozen or so people who remained unmoved after hearing the news of the little girl. They sat there cross-legged, unmoving like mountains. Among them was a divine king in silver-white armor that covered his entire body, only revealing his eyes. Although no one could see her true appearance, it was not difficult to tell that she was a woman from her curvaceous figure. Although the woman did not give off any pressure, the icy aura she gave off caused everyone nearby to feel chills all over their bodies. No one dared to approach her. As a result, the area several dozen meters around the woman was empty. No one dared to stay there. It's said that an extremely impressive prodigy has appeared on the 9th floor. Not only has he taken away a quarter of the heavenly resources in the divine medicinal garden, but he's also taken away the girl, protected by the world. Moreover, he's only just reached the divine king's level, but his battle prowess is on par with the divine king below the divine king. Even the divine king below the divine king was injured by him. When this news spread, it immediately caused an uproar on the 12th floor. Many people were filled with disbelief. Even some of the divine king below the divine king were doubtful. Being able to fight against a divine king after just reaching the divine king's level was just too shocking. It could even be described as shocking. Naturally, many people did not believe it. Chapter 2091. Jianqin? Who's that? Why haven't I heard of him before? His name doesn't seem to be on the Over-Gods plaque either. Many people remembered the name Jianqin. However, all of them found the name to be extremely unfamiliar. When the woman in silver-white armor heard the name Jianqin, she shuddered by an undetectable amount. Her eyes snapped open at that moment, and a smear of shock appeared in her cold eyes. Jianqin? Is it him? He's come to the saints' world as well, and he's entered the Poseidon Palace? Impossible. It shouldn't be him. Just how long has it been? How can he reach such a high level? The woman was very unsettled. Her heart churned. Afterwards, she stared at the person who spoke and said coldly, "Has this Jianqin comprehended the way of the sword?" The divine king immediately shivered when the woman in silver-white armor stared at him from very far away. It was as if all his blood had frozen. He did not dare to tarry, replying in a hurry, "That's right. According to what I know, Jianqin has indeed comprehended the way of the sword. However, his true strength is not the laws of the sword he has comprehended. Instead, it's the extremely great power he possesses. This power has closed the gap between him and the divine king, allowing him to fight against the divine king as soon as he has reached the level of divine king. An extremely great power. Is it really him?" The light in the eyes of the woman in silver-white armor flickered when she heard that. She was surprised and doubtful. Afterwards, she stood up and left the 12th floor under the fearful gazes of many divine kings. How terrifying! Who is this woman? Just a glance from her made my spine shiver. Even my blood has stopped flowing. After the woman left, the divine king wiped the cold sweat from his forehead. He was filled with fear. The woman moved very quickly. She directly arrived on the 9th floor. After a while, she directly entered the 8th floor and arrived in the world of volcanoes. She concealed her presence and arrived silently like a ghost. As a result, many people failed to sense her arrival. Only when she appeared where Jianqin had fallen into the lava did she attract everyone's attention. This was because it was impossible for her to not attract attention at this moment. The lava on the 8th floor was extremely hot. Even divine king experts could only hover 1,000 zhang in the air. They did not dare to descend at all. Even the 6 divine kings who fought Jianqin could only hover a few dozen zhang above the lava. Any lower, and even they would not be able to endure the terrifying heat. However, at this moment, the woman in silver-white armor was directly close to the surface of the lava. Her feet were only 3 inches away from the terrifying lava. From afar, it was as if she was standing on top of the lava, completely unafraid of the terrifying temperature of the lava that could incinerate the heavens and melt the earth. This scene left all the divine kings gathered here shocked. Song-ing and the other divine kings who had fought Jianchen had not left either. However, at this moment, they also stared at the snow-white figure who seemed to be standing on the lava in shock. Disbelief filled their faces. Who is she? At this moment, the 8th floor was completely silent. Everyone's eyes were focused on that figure as the same thought appeared in their minds. This person is so powerful. She can actually reach the surface of the lava. Looking at how steady she is, it's clearly extremely easy for her to do so. Is she a primordial realm expert? Someone communicated secretly. They were extremely shocked. Impossible. Primordial realm experts definitely can't enter the Azure Poseidon Palace. The woman did not even glance at the divine king above. She stood where Jianchen had fallen as if she was directly standing on the lava. Her feet were only 3 inches away from the scorching lava as she stared at the lava with her cold eyes. It was as if she could see through the lava in search of something. Only after 4 hours did she give up on searching. She thought, Jianchen, I know you're not dead, and it's impossible for you to die here. Otherwise, you wouldn't have the right to become the successor of a grand exalt of the immortals' world. I'll come and find you when you appear again. The woman suddenly vanished. She was silent and untraceable. Just like how no one sensed her arrival when she arrived, no one sensed how she left. She was truly like a ghost. So powerful. Her strength must have reached an astonishing level, Song-ing said sternly. Song-ing said sternly in the sky. When the woman appeared earlier, she clearly did not give off any pressure at all, but he felt extremely pressured. He shivered as if he was facing a primordial realm expert. If she's so powerful, who is she? Is she one of the top 3 of the Divine King's throne, or perhaps the strongest? Or did she not attempt the Divine King's throne, so her name did not appear on the Divine King's throne? Another supreme, Divine King said. He was also stern. These people clearly remembered every name on the Divine King's throne, but they only knew a name. They knew very little about them. Only a few supreme divine kings who appeared frequently and were extremely renowned could deduce their identities from their appearances, cultivation methods, and personalities. However, none of them knew the identity of the woman who had just appeared. Even from her appearance, they struggled to deduce her identity. This was because they did not know the gender of many of the names on the Divine King's throne. In the current Saints world, many large organizations learnt that the artifact spirit of the Tsang Poseidon Palace had awakened. This news immediately tugged at the heartstrings of all the authoritative figures, because the awakening of the artifact spirit of the Tsang Poseidon Palace meant that the Tsang Poseidon Palace would choose a new master. Not only was the Tsang Poseidon Palace a high-quality god artifact, but it also contained items that even organizations that stood at the apex of the pyramid coveted. As a result, as soon as the news of the awakening of the artifact spirit of the Tsang Poseidon Palace spread, the various organizations in the Saints' world began to move. They basically sent all the divine kings with outstanding talent to the Tsang Poseidon Palace. Some of the people who belonged to the divine king's throne were summoned by their clans or sects as well. They were all sent to the Tsang Poseidon Palace. The current Tsang Poseidon Palace had truly become a gathering of experts. The supreme divine kings had gathered, becoming the center of attention for all the peak organizations in the Saints' world. This was because the opening of the Tsang Poseidon Palace was no longer as simple as a competition for legacies between grand primes. Instead, it was a competition for the master of a divine hall. All of this was due to the awakening of the artifact spirit of the Tsang Poseidon Palace. As a result, more than half of the supreme divine kings on the Divine King's throne hurried to the Tsang Poseidon Palace. Chapter 2092. Gade was the most powerful person present, but there were many other Holy Emperor-level experts in the surroundings. As a result, his threat was not enough to scare off the people who wanted to steal the 8 wastelands. Gogox Gade, do you really think that you and Hao Jia's people can stop all of us? Yao Jun Yunfeng asked. Everyone, you should all belong to different organizations. Right now, there's only a single piece of the map, yet there are so many of you. I wonder how you'll split the map now that it's in your hands. An old man from Hao Jia's group spoke. He smiled and spoke nonchalantly. He was an ancestor of Hao Jia's group. He was also a holy emperor, but he was only at the 15th star. His nonchalant words immediately made many people frown. This was clearly an extremely difficult problem to solve. None of them wished to risk their lives only to end up benefiting someone else. Seeing how everyone began to waver, a holy emperor immediately called out, "He's trying to drive a wedge between us. His intentions are obvious. Don't fall for his trap. Once we get the 8 wastelands, we'll discuss how to split it, or we can just split the map into several pieces, one for each person." All right, that's a pretty good idea. It's settled then. Immediately, many people agreed to the plan and agreed. Yao Jun Yunfeng licked his lips and chuckled. If that's the case, there's no need for us to waste time here. Everyone, let's go together and get the map fragment. Yao Jun was the most powerful person here aside from Gardner. As soon as he finished speaking, he charged at Gardner first. At the same time, he yelled, "Fellow 15th-star cultivators, come with me to deal with this old bastard Gardner. Leave the people of the Hao family to the others." Immediately, a few Holy Emperor experts flew out from the crowd and fought Gade together with Yao Jun Yunfeng. As soon as the Holy Emperor experts clashed, the violent shockwaves of energy swept through the surroundings, causing mountains to collapse and the ground to crack. The entire world shook violently. There was a Holy Emperor in Hao Jia's group as well. He led over 20 experts from his clan and fought against over 100 experts. On the other hand, the Holy Emperor in Hao Jia's group was kept busy by the last of the Holy Emperor who fought for the map fragment of the 8 wastelands. As a result, Hao Jia's group faced over 100 experts of the same level. With such a huge difference in strength, they were at a disadvantage as soon as they clashed. They were surrounded and beaten up by enemies that outnumbered them by several times. However, the people who fought for the map fragment of the 8 wastelands did not belong to the same organization, so they did not trust each other. As a result, the people who fought against Hao Jia were also on guard against the people beside them, preventing them from launching sneak attacks. As a result, their strength was greatly reduced, and they were unable to use their full strength. Although they firmly suppressed Hao Jia's group, no one dared to strike heavily at the risk of exposing themselves. On the other side, the battle between Gade and the Holy Emperor had reached a white-hot level. Gade did not have so many concerns. He used all of his strength without holding back and fought against 5 experts of the same level as him. Their battle shook the surroundings. They fought from the ground to the sky, and then from the sky to the ground. They retreated as they fought, and they were already 100 kilometers away. Violent ripples of energy wreaked havoc where they fought, enveloping the surrounding space. It had basically become a region of death, where even saint rulers dared not to set foot in. The 5 holy emperors who fought against Gade were all at the 3rd to 4th heavenly layer, but they did not dare to use their full strength due to their ulterior motives. They did not want to exhaust themselves too much or become injured, which would be the best opportunity for them to fight for the map fragment of the 8 wastelands. As a result, the 5 of them only managed to fight to a draw with Gade, a 6th heavenly layer holy emperor. They even seemed to be at a disadvantage. Arg, arg. A few miserable cries rang out. The weaker saint rulers of Hao Jia's group all vomited blood as they collapsed. They were all heavily injured. Their withdrawal from the battle immediately increased the pressure on the remaining experts of Hao Jia's group. It became more and more difficult for them to hold on. If it were not for the fact that they were all on guard against each other, they would not have been able to hold on long ago. At this moment, Jianchen and newbies concealed their presences 1,000 kilometers away. They hid behind a mountain peak. Although they could not see the battle up ahead because they were too far away, they could clearly sense the violent ripples of energy. It's too far away. We can't see anything, and we don't know what the situation is like. Jianchen, let's get closer, Newbie suggested. Jianchen extended his hand to stop Newbie's suggestion. He said there's no need. We can't get too close. Let's be careful together. I've always been monitoring what's happening up ahead, and I've discovered that there are still hidden experts who have yet to take action. We can't get too close. I can sense several presences of the Holy Emperor. One of them is no weaker than by Yifei and Ling Yuanzi. Jianchen, do you think we can take the 8 wastelands with our current strength? Newbies became rather worried. Several presences of the Holy Emperor had appeared up ahead, so he was not confident at all. We can only take the 8 wastelands with wits, not force. It'll just depend on whether we have the opportunity or not. Fortunately, we have an advantage that no one else has, Jianchen said. What kind of advantage? Newbies was curious. Jianchen smiled mysteriously. You'll know in the future. Oh, right. Spit out the water spirit pearl. If we go fight for the map fragment later, we'll expose the presences of us outsiders. Once we get the map fragment, we'll find a safe place and use the water spirit pearl to hide our presences. That way, we'll be able to confuse them and make them focus on searching for outsiders, ignoring their own clansmen. It'll give us an extra layer of cover. Newbies' eyes lit up. Without any hesitation, he immediately spat out the water spirit pearl that concealed the presences of the outsiders and placed it in his space ring. Jianchen also spat out the water spirit pearl and the holy water into the artifact space. To him, the space ring was not particularly safe because it could be stolen at any time. Only by placing it in the artifact space could he ensure that nothing would happen, unless the artifact betrayed him or he died. Let's wait here. When it's time to move out, I'll let you know, Jianchen said. The battle lasted for only 10 minutes, and several more of Hao Jia's people were heavily injured. Their numbers were reduced from over 20 to a dozen, and 3 of them had died on the spot. Only their souls had managed to escape. The remaining dozen or so people were still bitterly holding on, but they were covered in blood. They would not be able to last much longer. The situation was becoming more and more disadvantageous for them. Hao Jia's Holy Emperor became extremely stern as well. He had already anticipated that they would be robbed on the way here. He originally thought that with Senior Gade's assistance, he would be able to ensure that nothing would happen. However, he had never expected so many people to come. Just the number of people who had reached the level of Holy Emperor had come. We can't let this drag on any longer. Hao Jia's Holy Emperor thought. Determination flashed through his eyes as he knocked back his opponent with a single strike. A tremendous presence immediately radiated from his body as he called out, "Sky-destroying 3 palms!" A huge hand suddenly formed 100 meters in the air. It radiated with a devastating pressure. With the appearance of the hand, the laws of the world seemed to be greatly affected, becoming chaotic. All the saint rulers, and even the Holy Emperor, were unable to use spatial force. The hand was completely condensed from the essence of the world. It possessed tremendous power. Its appearance caused the space in a radius of several dozen kilometers to freeze. Even the Holy Emperor, who fought against Hao Jia's Holy Emperor, was greatly affected. As if he had fallen into a swamp, his movements became sluggish. A Tian-level saint technique. The Holy Emperor's face drastically changed. He became rather pale in a single moment. A Tian-level saint technique was equivalent to a saint-tier battle skill on the Tian-Yuan continent. It possessed devastating power. Even the Holy Emperor, who had reached the 3rd heavenly layer, had not grasped such a powerful technique. Although saint rulers could comprehend a Tian-level saint technique, grasping one was not so simple. Many Holy Emperor-level experts were unable to grasp a single Tian-level saint technique. As for creating a Tian-level sane technique, it could only be comprehended by someone who was extremely talented in comprehending the mysteries of the world. It would take 10,000 years for someone to do so. Even in Mercenary City on the Tianyuan continent, there were only a handful of people who could create a Saint tier battle skill on the same level as a Tian-level Saint technique. The huge palm seal sealed off the space within a radius of tens of miles. Then, it descended from the sky with a majestic aura, silently merging into the ground and disappearing. Along with the hand, over 100 saint rulers and a saint king had disappeared as well. All of them had vanished without a trace. Only the saint rulers of the Hao family remained in the air with stunned gazes. They stared at the ground below them, dumbfounded. A bottomless pit of unknown depth had appeared below them. It was palm-sized and enveloped a radius of several kilometers. The Holy Emperor and over 100 saint rulers had all been slammed into the ground. Arg! A furious roar rang out from the bottomless pit. The Holy Emperor did not die after taking on the attack of the Tian-level saint technique. Afterward, over 100 saint ruler presences appeared from the bottomless pit. The power of the Tian-level saint technique had been taken on by the Holy Emperor and over 100 saint rulers at the same time. Not a single one of them had died. The Holy Emperor Haojia's eyes were cold. He raised his hand, and another huge hand immediately condensed 100 meters in the air. It slammed toward the ground with lightning speed, causing the ground to shake violently. Chapter 2093. The Holy Emperor Haojia's heaven-destroying 3 palms basically landed at the same time, striking the same spot. After the 3 palms, the presence in the bottomless pit completely vanished. The fate of over 100 saint rulers and the Holy Emperor was unknown. Gogok-Se Saint tier battle skill, used by a 7th heavenly layer saint ruler, was enough to heavily injure, or even directly kill, a Holy Emperor. If the user was a Holy Emperor, it would obviously be much more powerful than a saint ruler. Even if the saint rulers and the Holy Emperor did not die, they would definitely be unimaginably injured. Gade and the 5 Holy Emperors saw the situation over 100 kilometers away. They were all shocked. Even Gade, who was the strongest among them, had not grasped a single Tian-level saint technique. Haojia's Holy Emperor was far weaker than them, yet he had already grasped a powerful Tian-level saint technique. They all found this hard to believe. Tian-level saint techniques were not so easy to comprehend. They had all gone to the divine halls in their territories to comprehend them, but without any exception, all of them had failed. The Tian-level saint techniques were so profound and complicated that even Holy Emperors would struggle to comprehend them. Ha 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 ha, old man. Let's see just how you'll be able to fight for the 8 wastelands now, Jianchen laughed. Haojia's Holy Emperor had grasped a Tian-level saint technique, greatly increasing their strength. This made Gade feel excited. With that, they would be able to protect the 8 wastelands even more. The Holy Emperor Haojia stared at the bottomless pit that had been created by the 3 palms of destruction and sneered. You will definitely pay a heavy price for stealing from us, Haojia. The Holy Emperor Haojia looked in the direction of Gade's battle and said, Senior Gade, let me help you. No need. Old man will hold them back. You take the 8 wastelands and leave, Gade said loudly. The Holy Emperor Haojia hesitated for a while before clasping his hands at Gade. Senior Gade, I'll be leaving first. I'll come back another day to thank you for saving me. The Holy Emperor Haojia no longer hesitated and flew away with the remaining experts of Haojia. A sudden change occurred. A blood-red light flashed past, silently passing by the Hao clan Saint Emperor. The blood-red light came without any warning and caught the Holy Emperor Haojia off guard. It directly cut off one of the Holy Emperor Haojia's fingers. The Holy Emperor Haojia groaned in pain, but when he saw the finger cut off, his face changed. It was the finger where the interspatial ring was. The Hao clan Saint King was furious and immediately became like an angry lion. He let out a furious roar and immediately chased after the finger, wanting to take back the interspatial ring. The blood-red light flashed again and caught the interspatial ring before the Holy Emperor Hao Jia could. "Where do you think you're going?" "Stay here." The Holy Emperor Hao Jia's eyes were red as he chased after the red light. "The map of the 8 wastelands has been taken away." Yao Jun Yunfeng, who was fighting with Gade, cried out. Then he ignored Gade and chased after the red light that had taken the interspatial ring. The other Holy Emperor and Gade also stopped fighting and chased after the red light as fast as they could. The red light took the interspatial ring and flew for 100 miles before stopping. Then a hunchbacked old woman appeared out of nowhere. She grabbed the Holy Emperor Hao Jia's severed finger and took the interspatial ring. She threw the severed finger far away and said in a hoarse voice, "The map of the 8 wastelands is mine. None of you can get it." Before she finished speaking, the old woman's body flickered, and she turned into a blur and fled. "Stay here." Gardner flew into a rage and threw a punch at the old woman. A massive fist, accompanied by surging energy waves, shot towards the old woman with lightning-like speed. The old woman had already reached the 16th star, but she was only at the 5th heavenly layer of the Holy Emperor. She was slightly weaker than Gade. She quickly turned around and pushed out with her shriveled hands, colliding with the fist of energy that had caught up to her. Along with a violent rumble, violent energy shockwaves wreaked havoc between heaven and earth. After receiving Gardner's punch, not only did the old woman's speed not decrease in the slightest, but she even borrowed the powerful recoil to flee into the distance at an even faster speed. At this moment, a soft, white hand seemed to appear before the old woman out of nowhere. It landed on the old woman's chest with lightning-like speed. The old woman had just blocked Gade's attack, so she was caught off guard and forcefully received the attack. Spurt. The old woman vomited a mouthful of blood as her face paled in a single moment. The attack was extremely powerful, and she was heavily injured as she was caught off guard. "The 8 wastelands is mine now," a clear and crisp voice rang out. A clear and lively voice rang out in the old woman's ears. A beautiful woman in an azure dress had appeared before the old woman. The space ring that had been in the old woman's hand had already landed on her. The azure-clothed woman was also a holy emperor. She was on par with the old woman, at the 5th heavenly layer of the holy emperor. However, she gave off a different presence from the people of the sea race. "You're a human expert." The old woman stared at the azure-clothed woman and said with a heavy voice, "I am Qing Yishuan. Thank you for giving me the 8 wastelands." The azure-clothed woman chuckled. The woman in green let out a crisp giggle. Her smiling face was very beautiful, like 100 flowers blooming. Then there was a flash of green light. The woman in green, Qing Yishuan, had already left this place and fled into the distance. The old woman coughed up a mouthful of blood as she stared at Qing Yishuan's departing figure hatefully. She did not chase after her. I never thought that even one of the 8 human experts, Qing Yishuan, would be involved. She even managed to heavily injure me with a sneak attack. "Damn it," the old woman said with great reluctance. Very few people in the sea realm did not know Qing Yishuan's name, other than the survivors of the sea race. There were also magical beasts and humans in the sea realm. However, they were extremely few in number. Without any exception, all of them had entered the sea realm as saint rulers and cultivated there, breaking through to the level of holy emperor in the end. This was why there were foreign holy emperors in the sea realm. 8 of the holy emperors were the most famous. They were all 16th star Poseidon warriors, or holy emperor at the 5th heavenly layer at the very least. Qing Yishuan just happened to be one of them. Behind her, Gade and the other 5 holy emperors shot past the old woman as a blur, pursuing Qing Yishuan. "Please rest for a while," an ancient voice rang out. An aged voice resounded from the heaven and earth. 2 white-robed old men with white hair and ruddy complexions suddenly appeared. They blocked the path of Jialan and the others. These two old men were also one of the 8 great experts of the human race. Die if you get in my way! Jia Lan furiously roared out as he engaged in a great battle with one of the human experts. The other human expert blocked the other 5 Saint Kings all by himself. Even though the 2 of them had lost the upper hand, they only wanted to keep the battle going for a while. They did not want to fight to the death. Qing Yishuan held the space ring and ran for several thousand kilometers before finally stopping. She looked back and let out a long sigh. She said softly, "Fortunately, I had 2 helpers. Otherwise, I really wouldn't have been able to shake them off. I've paid quite a price, but it's all worth it as long as I can get the Octaterra map fragment." As soon as she said that, Qing Yishuan's eyes suddenly narrowed. She suddenly looked to the side and saw 2 young men around the age of 20 fly toward her. One of them wore blue robes and was handsome. He radiated with an otherworldly presence. The other person wore golden robes and had long, golden hair. His face was filled with undisguised pride. They were Jianqin and newbies. "Humans, magical beasts," Qing Yishuan said softly. She recognized Jianqin and newbies with a single glance. Jianqin and newbies directly made their way toward Qing Yishuan. In the end, they stopped 100 meters away from her. Jianqin looked at Qing Yishuan calmly and clasped his hands. "Junior Yang Yutian greets Senior. Senior must be fighting for the 8 wastelands." Qing Yishuan's face immediately changed slightly when she heard about the 8 wastelands. A cold light flickered through her eyes as she glared at Jianqin and newbies. She said, "Are you bold enough to take the 8 wastelands from me? Brat, I'll overlook your disrespect earlier because we're of the same clan. If you know what's good for you, leave this place quickly or don't blame me for being rude to you." Jianqin smiled faintly. "Senior, you've misunderstood. I've come looking for Senior this time because I want to ask if Senior's space ring really contains the 8 wastelands." Qing Yishuan seemed to realize something when she heard that. A gleam of light flashed through her eyes, and she immediately checked the space ring. Her face immediately changed drastically from what she saw. She angrily tossed the space ring far away and said angrily, "It's actually empty." The space ring has already been in Senior's possession for some time now. Although it's empty, I'm sure the people behind you won't believe Senior's one-sided words. They'll definitely think that Senior has hidden the 8 wastelands. Not only have you failed to obtain the 8 wastelands, but you've also been misunderstood or even hunted down by many experts of the sea race. Senior's current situation does not seem optimistic. Jianqin smiled faintly. Chapter 2094. Qing Yishuan's face paled from anger. She stomped her foot angrily and said, "These bastards from the Haojia have actually tricked all of us. Brat, tell me, how did you know the space ring was empty?" A tremendous presence radiated from Qing Yishuan, firmly suppressing Jianqin and newbies. "Senior, the 8 wastelands are still with the Holy Emperor from the Haojia. He's currently fleeing with the 8 wastelands to the north. If you don't hurry up and chase after him, you probably won't be able to catch up," Jianqin said. "Why do you know so much? Why should I listen to your nonsense?" Qing Yishuan called out as she stared at Jianqin closely. "I've already said what I wanted to say. Whether you believe me or not is up to you, Senior," Jianqin said calmly. The light in Qing Yishuan's eyes flickered with uncertainty. After a moment of hesitation, she chose to listen to Jianqin in the end. She turned into a faint blur and flew towards the north. The Octaterra map fragment was just too important, so Qing Yishuan chased after Jianqin with the mindset that she would rather believe him than not. "Damn brat, I'll believe you this time. If I discover that you're lying to me, even if we're of the same clan, I, Qing Yishuan, will never let you go. I'll definitely hunt you down to the ends of the world." Qing Yishuan's voice rang out in the air, but she had already vanished. "That's strange. Jianqin, how do you know that the 8 wastelands aren't in the space ring? And how do you know where the Holy Emperor from the Haojia is?" Can your eyes see things from several thousand kilometers away? Nubis could no longer hold back his curiosity after Qing Yishuan left. Jianchen smiled mysteriously. Now is not the time to talk about that. That Qing Yishuan is just too powerful. I hope the Holy Emperor from the Hao, Jia, won't be so weak. However, the Holy Emperor from the Hao, Jia possesses a saint-tier battle skill. It won't be easy for Qing Yishuan to steal something from him. Newbies, let's go. Perhaps it's time for us to obtain the 8 wastelands. Jianchen and newbies immediately concealed their presences and carefully flew forward. The city lord and the 5 other holy emperors who fought over the 8 wastelands were all busy with 2 old men. The 8 holy emperors were still engaged in an intense battle, but the holy emperor from the Hao Jia, who had lost a finger, was not there. He had already vanished. The shock waves from the battle between the 8 holy emperors swept over 10,000 kilometers away, attracting all the experts there. A few saint rulers hovered several dozen kilometers away from the battle, watching from afar. Several thousand kilometers to the north, the holy emperor from the Hao Jia saint rulers had already separated himself from the Hao Jia saint rulers. He flew by himself at full speed, heading toward the territory of the Heaven's Spirit Hall. The secret of my space ring will be discovered very soon, so I need to get to the Heaven's Spirit Hall as soon as possible. Once I reach the territory of the Heaven's Spirit Hall, I'll be able to ask the Hall Elders to help me fend off the enemies. At that time, no matter how many 16th Star Poseidon warriors there are, they won't be able to pose any threat to me. The Holy Emperor from the Hao Jia Saint Ruler softly murmured. He did not put the 8 wastelands into his space ring. Instead, he kept it with him. At this moment, a tremendous presence rapidly shot over from afar. It chased after the Holy Emperor from the Hao Jia Saint Ruler in a straight line. The Holy Emperor from the Hao Jia Saint Ruler's face drastically changed. He cried out, "Oh no, it's a 16th star expert. Has he discovered that my space ring is empty so quickly?" The Holy Emperor from the Hao Jia Saint Ruler panicked. He no longer held back, and a faint, red mist surrounded him, immediately increasing his speed. He used a secret technique that damaged his vitality to flee. "Old man, you can't escape," a clear voice rang out. The Holy Emperor from the Hao Jia Saint Ruler. Qing Yishuan had also used a secret technique to increase her speed, chasing after him with lightning speed that completely surpassed the Holy Emperor from the Hao Jia Saint Ruler. The Holy Emperor from the Hao Jia Saint Ruler did not say anything. He gritted his teeth and fled as fast as he could. But no matter how fast he increased his speed, he was unable to pull away from the person behind him. The distance between them closed bit by bit. Very soon, they went from a few hundred kilometers to 100 kilometers, and then from 100 kilometers to a few dozen kilometers. Screw it. The Holy Emperor from the Hao Jia Saint Ruler immediately stopped fleeing when he realized that he could not escape. He hovered in the air with a pale face as a tremendous presence immediately radiated from his body. He was like a primordial beast that was slowly awakening from its slumber. Heaven-level saint technique. 3 palms of annihilation. The Holy Emperor from the Hao Jia Saint Tier roared out and used his Saint Tier battle skill again. The world force in the surroundings rapidly surged. The formless world force actually condensed into a huge, tangible hand above the Holy Emperor from the Hao Jia Saint Ruler. A tremendous pressure filled the surroundings, sealing off a radius of several dozen kilometers and causing the space there to suddenly freeze. When the azure-robed Qing Yishuan was 5 kilometers away from the Holy Emperor from the Hao Jia Saint Ruler, she was bound by the suddenly frozen space. The powerful presence from the heaven-level saint technique locked onto her tightly. Even with the strength of the Holy Emperor from the 5th heavenly layer, her face could not help but change drastically. Tremendous saint force surged out from Qing Yishuan's body, immediately shattering the frozen space. However, The quagmire-like space around her still greatly restricted her movements. A faint azure sword appeared in Qing Yishuan's hand. With a cry, she shot toward the Holy Emperor from Haojia as a streak of azure light. She attempted to interrupt the Saint Tier battle skill from Haojia. With the Holy Emperor from Haojia's strength, he did not need much time to charge up the Saint Tier battle skill. He finished his preparations very quickly. With a flip of his hand, he slammed it down. Immediately, the huge palm floating in the sky let out a rumbling sound as it slammed down from the sky with a majestic aura that seemed capable of destroying the heavens and earth. Qing Yishuan's clothes and hair fluttered wildly. She gave up on attacking the Holy Emperor from Haojia, Saint Ruler. She pointed her sword at the sky and shot up as a blur. She planned on forcefully receiving the Saint Tier battle skill with her own strength. She had been completely locked onto by the Saint Tier battle skill, so she could not escape. She had no other choice but to receive it head-on. Boom! Qing Yishuan's petite body collided with the gigantic hand. Their sizes were completely disproportionate, but a deafening rumble erupted. Violent ripples of energy wreaked havoc in the surroundings, ripping apart space and obliterating the world. It was reduced to darkness. The power of the huge hand did not diminish at all. It pressed down from the sky with an unstoppable force, leaving a bottomless palm print on the ground. The ground trembled as Qing Yishuan was pressed into the ground by the huge hand. But very soon, she flew out of the ground in her azure clothes. Powerful and surging azure saint force permeated her body as terrifying ripples of energy caused the surrounding space to tremble. Even with her strength at the 5th heavenly layer as the Holy Emperor, Qing Yishuan was unable to remain unscathed after forcefully receiving the Saint Tier battle skill. Her hair was disheveled and her face was rather pale. Her clothes were rather disheveled as well. She was in a horrible shape. Boom! A great rumble rang out from the sky. A second palm strike pressed down from the sky. It was even more powerful than the first. Qing Yishuan resisted as hard as she could, but she was still no match for it. She was struck into the ground once again. Blood flowed from the corner of her lips, and her face was pale. She was quite heavily injured. Afterwards, the third palm strike followed. It was the most powerful one, enough to destroy space and make it collapse. Spurt! Qing Yishuan vomited blood after forcefully receiving the attack. Her face was pale and her hair was disheveled. She was in a horrible shape, heavily injured. The Holy Emperor from Haojia was rather exhausted after using 2 Tian level saint techniques. His face was rather pale and he was extremely weak. After using the 3 palms, the Holy Emperor from Haojia no longer cared about the outcome. He turned around and fled into the distance. A surging sword qi appeared from behind, and Qing Yishuan flew out from the ground in a horrible shape. She charged toward the Holy Emperor from Haojia as hard as she could. Although she was heavily injured, she was still a supreme expert at the 5th heavenly layer after all. Her life force was extremely great, so she still retained a lot of battle prowess. Leave behind the 8 wastelands, and I'll spare your life, Qing Yishuan called out. Very soon, she began fighting the Holy Emperor from Haojia. However, the 2 of them failed to sense that 2 saint rulers that they did not take seriously had already stealthily approached 500 kilometers away. The 2 of them concealed their presences and hid there carefully. The 2 of them were Jianqin and Nubes. A golden light shot out from Jianqin's forehead. In the end, it turned into a small, golden tower in his hand. Jianqin turned around and said to Nubes, "We need to enter the artifact space. Don't resist." With a flash of white light, Jianqin and Nubes vanished. They had been sucked in by the power of the saint artifact. After sucking in the 2 of them, the saint artifact smashed into the ground and traveled to the battlefield. Qing Yishuan and the Holy Emperor from Haojia fought in the air. They were locked in a stalemate. If Qing Yishuan was in peak condition, she would definitely be able to deal with the Holy Emperor from Haojia easily. However, She was heavily injured now. Even though she still retained her great battle prowess, she was nowhere near her peak condition. The two of them fought intensely for around 10 minutes. Qing Yishuan's sword pierced the Holy Emperor from Hao Jia's chest. He immediately vomited blood, and the powerful sword Qi tore apart the Holy Emperor's clothes. Immediately, a foot-wide piece of black fur appeared in the air, fluttering in the wind. It was completely undamaged. The Holy Emperor from Hao Jia's face changed drastically when he saw the black fur. He ignored his wounds and reached for the black fur with all his might. However, Qing Yishuan was even faster than him. Her slender fingers turned into a blur as she grabbed the black fur with lightning speed. She immediately became overjoyed and said, "I've finally obtained the 8 Wastelands fragment." Qing Yishuan did not stay any longer after obtaining the 8 Wastelands fragment. She turned around and retreated in an attempt to flee. The Holy Emperor from Hao Jia bellowed out furiously and sent a palm strike at Qing Yishuan's back as hard as he could. Blood sprayed from Qing Yishuan's mouth as her wounds worsened. She then used the force of the palm strike to flee even faster. She no longer wanted to tangle with the Holy Emperor from Hao Jia. "Qing Yishuan, Hao Jia, will never let you go," the Holy Emperor from Hao Jia bellowed out furiously. He was extremely furious. Qing Yishuan fled with a pale face. She wanted to find a safe place to heal as soon as possible. Her current situation was extremely bad. She had not suppressed her wounds from the battle earlier, so they rapidly worsened. They had reached an extremely terrible state. Even an ordinary Holy Emperor would struggle to deal with them. "Although I'm heavily injured, everything will be worth it as long as I can obtain the 8 Wastelands fragment." Qing Yishuan glanced at the black beast hide in her hand as a smile of joy involuntarily appeared on her pale face. Afterwards, she casually hid the Octaterra map fragment in her clothes for safekeeping. She did not put it in her space ring. Chapter 2095. Qing Yishuan was startled. She immediately became alert. She swung her sword and stabbed at the golden light that shot up from below. Gogoxting! With a gentle sound, the golden light was knocked away by Qing Yishuan's attack, revealing the round shape of the golden tower. However, the tower suddenly began to shine brightly, enveloping a radius of several hundred meters. Even Qing Yishuan was enveloped by the light. The saint artifact used its own power to turn a radius of several hundred meters into its territory. Although it could not control everything, it could absorb or release anything that did not resist within a radius of several hundred meters into the artifact space. The golden-robed newbies left the artifact space under the protection of the power of the saint artifact. He silently appeared behind Qing Yishuan and spat out a mouthful of poisonous gas. The venom of the golden-striped silver snake was ranked 3rd on the world poison rankings. With its strength as a 9th heavenly layer saint ruler, the venom it spat out could even kill the Holy Emperor. Qing Yishuan inhaled the gas due to a moment of carelessness and immediately felt dizzy. "Oh no, there's poison." Qing Yishuan was surprised. She immediately sensed that someone had suddenly appeared behind her. However, just when she was about to react, Newbies had already grabbed her back. His fingers had pierced deeply into her body, and the powerful poison surged into her body like a flood. Qing Yishuan cried out, and tremendous saint force surged out of her body. She directly knocked back Newbies with her supreme strength. Her face was frosty, and her eyes were filled with heavy killing intent. She directly attacked Newbies with her sword. Newbies showed no fear, directly engaging in an intense battle with Qing Yishuan. If Qing Yishuan was in her peak condition, he would probably only be able to flee. But not only was she heavily injured now, she had also been poisoned by him. It was difficult for her to use even 50% of her strength, so she was no longer a threat to Newbies. Newbies and Qing Yishuan hurriedly clashed a few times. Newbies' chest was pierced by Qing Yishuan's sword, becoming heavily injured. Newbies also landed a punch on Qing Yishuan, causing her to fly away while vomiting blood. However, before Qing Yishuan could stabilize herself, Genshin silently appeared before her with the help of the saint artifact. He extended his hand into Qing Yishuan's bosom with lightning-like speed, and immediately, 2 plump and soft lumps of flesh entered Genshin's senses. The elastic feeling began to press against Genshin's hand, causing her clothes to bulge. As soon as Genshin's hand reached into Qing Yishuan's bosom, it came into contact with the 8 wastelands. Without any hesitation, he immediately reached out and gripped the 8 wastelands tightly. The feeling in his hand told Genshin that he had not only grabbed the 8 wastelands, but also a large lump of smooth, tender flesh and a piece of cloth. Arg! Qing Yishuan could not help but cry out. Her eyes widened as she stared at the hand that had already reached into her bosom in a daze. Disbelief filled her face. After becoming stunned, Qing Yishuan immediately returned to her senses. Her slightly red face was immediately filled with anger as she shrieked, "You pervert!" They were too close, so Qing Yishuan was unable to use her sword. In a moment of desperation, Qing Yishuan directly sent a palm strike at Genshin. How could a palm strike from a holy emperor at the 5th heavenly layer be underestimated? Even though Qing Yishuan was heavily injured, her strike still exceeded the limits of Genshin's chaotic body. Spurt! Genshin immediately vomited blood as he was blown far away. His hand that had reached into Qing Yishuan's bosom was pulled out as well. Genshin held the black fragment of the 8 wastelands tightly in his hand. Aside from the fragment of the 8 wastelands, there was also a white doo-doo that Genshin had accidentally grabbed. Genshin had pulled it out as well. The faint fragrance and warmth of the doo-doo fluttered in the wind, swaying wildly. Qing Yishuan's face became bright red when she saw the white doo-doo in Genshin's hand. However, her eyes burned with fury. She was both furious and embarrassed. "You pervert! I'll cut you to pieces!" Qing Yishuan was furious. She ignored her wounds and charged at Genshin with her sword. "Let's go. This woman is far too powerful. She's heavily injured, yet she still has such great battle prowess." Newbies arrived beside Genshin in a flash. He grabbed Genshin and fled into the distance. At the same time, the golden tower disappeared into Genshin's forehead as a golden streak of light. "Where do you think you're going? If I don't kill you today, I, Qing Yishuan, will never stop!" Qing Yishuan screamed from behind as she pursued Genshin and Newbies relentlessly. Her face was frosty. "You've already been poisoned by my poison. If you don't suppress it and the poison spreads, you'll die to my poison before you can catch up to us. I believe you know extremely well just how potent the venom of a golden-striped silver snake is." Newbies turned around and said loudly to Qing Yishuan. He wanted to break free from Qing Yishuan's pursuit. "I'll remember the 2 of you. In the future, I'll definitely chase you to the ends of the world." Qing Yishuan roared furiously. Qing Yishuan furiously roared out. She did not continue the chase. Instead, she turned around and flew off in another direction. Newbies was right. Her body was in an extremely terrible condition. She had been heavily injured first before being poisoned. If she did not deal with this, she would die even if she was a Saint King. Newbies used his fastest speed to flee several tens of thousand kilometers with Genshin before stopping. Afterward, the 2 of them directly entered the artifact space. Genshin and Newbies recovered from their wounds very quickly under the treatment of the origin power of the artifact spirit. They returned to their peak condition. Only now did Genshin and Newbies finally let out a sigh of relief. Stealing something from a 5th heavenly layer, Holy Emperor, was an extremely risky action for them. The slightest carelessness could have put their lives in danger. "I've finally gotten the 8 wastelands." Genshin smiled excitedly. He finally looked at the 8 wastelands that he had been holding in his hand the entire time. However, he suddenly became stunned and his expression became extremely strange. Due to the urgency of the situation before, he seemed to have taken out something else aside from the 8 wastelands, but he had never paid attention to it. Only now did he realize that, aside from the 8 wastelands, there was also a white Didu. Let me see what the 8 wastelands looks like. Nubis also turned his head and stared at the 8 wastelands in Jianshin's hand. However, his eyes locked onto the white Didu very soon, and he immediately became stunned. His mouth widened as disbelief filled his face. Jianshin, WW, what is this? Nubis pointed at the white Didu and stuttered. Jianshin raised the item to his eyes and studied it carefully. When he finally confirmed that his eyes were not playing tricks on him, he could not help but bitterly smile. This is a Dudu. Jianshin, why will you actually pulled off her Dudu? Nubis was extremely shocked as he stuttered. The situation was urgent back then. In my haste, how could I have noticed something like this? Jianshin smiled bitterly. Jianshin, you're far too impressive. She's an expert at the 5th heavenly layer of the Holy Emperor. No wonder, she said, she would chase us to the ends of the world. Nubis could not help but laugh aloud towards the end. Jianshin smiled bitterly as well as he looked at the white Didu in his hand. He carefully placed it into his space ring, planning to return it to her in the future. He said, "All right, let's not talk about that anymore. Let's take a look at the 8 wastelands first." Nubis immediately became serious when the topic of the 8 wastelands was brought up. He immediately moved closer to Jianshin and studied the 8 wastelands. The 8 wastelands was a piece of black hide that was about a square foot in size. It was extremely tough, where even a holy emperor would find it extremely difficult to destroy it. There were some blurry diagrams carved on it. At a closer look, it was not difficult to discover that it was an incomplete map. The 8 wastelands is the map to the divine hall of the 8 wastelands. It's also the key to the divine hall of the 8 wastelands. We need to gather enough fragments to complete the map, Nubis said. Jianshin nodded in agreement before putting the 8 wastelands away. He took out a water spirit bead from his space ring and swallowed it. He said, "We can't stay here for long. Let's leave quickly." Nubis nodded. He took out a water spirit bead from his space ring and swallowed it as well. He left the artifact space with Jianshin. Chapter 2096. Jianshin took a deep breath and stopped thinking about these headache-inducing problems. He only hoped that if things really developed like that, he would have enough power to stop it. He did not ask Tai Ta about the future. The world was constantly changing. Who could say for sure what would happen in the future? Perhaps something that he agreed to today would suddenly change tomorrow. Jianshin stood on a short peak and stared in the direction of the lunisolar cave for a while. He gently sighed and said, "Let's go back." Taita had a simple and honest personality. He did not notice the trace of worry on Jianshin's face. He excitedly chatted and laughed with Jianshin as he made his way out of Dragon Island. "Jianshin, my strength has increased greatly this time. Say, do you think I don't need to be locked up in Mercenary City by Senior Tianjian anymore? Jianshin, how powerful are the 10 protector clans? Do I have the ability to contend against them with my current strength? Once we get out, I need to go home first. I haven't been back for so many years already. I miss home." Taita had completely forgotten about his sorrow. The pain from Ruijin's death was rapidly fading away, allowing Taita to return to his former self. Jianshin, Taita, and Blackfish left Dragon Island without any reluctance. They reappeared in the outside world. "Jianshin," a cold and magnetic voice suddenly rang out. The sea goddess' illusory body suddenly appeared in the void. Her face was hazy, as if there was a layer of mist separating it from her face, making it impossible to see her clearly. "Greetings to Her Majesty Poseidon." Jianshin was slightly surprised and immediately clasped his hands towards Poseidon. "Greetings to Senior." Blackfish and Taita did not dare to be careless. They politely bowed towards Poseidon. Poseidon did not even glance at Blackfish. Her eyes paused on Taita for a while before looking back at Jianshin. She said, the saint's fruit of the death nest has reappeared. This fruit has the fortune of the world and can allow people to break through to the level of Holy Emperor. It takes 10,000 years to germinate, 10,000 years to bloom, 10,000 years to bear fruit, and 10,000 years to ripen. It takes 40,000 years for one to ripen, and each time it ripens, it will only exist for 3 months. After 3 months, it will vanish. The saint's fruit is about to ripen, so you cannot miss it. What? The saint's fruit that can allow people to become Holy Emperor? There's actually a fruit like that in the world. Jianqin, Taita, and Taita were shocked. Disbelief flooded their faces. If it had not come from Poseidon, they would have never believed it, even if they were beaten to death. A single fruit could actually allow someone to become a saint emperor. This was just too exaggerated. Even heavenly resources that were over 100,000 years old would not possess such great effects. The existence of the saint's fruit is a secret on the Tianyuan continent. Only a few ancient clans know about it, but every time it appears, it will raise the attention of various large organizations. Even Holy Emperor experts have once taken part in the struggle for it. Poseidon said. Jianqin immediately became stern. He said, "Your Majesty Poseidon, may I ask where the saint's fruit grows in the death nest? Do you have an exact location?" "It's in the very depths of the death nest. It's extremely dangerous there, so you have to be careful. Even Holy Emperor experts have a chance of dying there," said Poseidon. "What? Even Holy Emperor experts have a chance of dying there?" Jianqin and Blackfish were shocked. They found this to be extremely unbelievable. The death nest is a burial ground of the ancient battlefield. In ancient times, many experts of the humans, magical beasts, and the 100 races died there during the great war between the 3 races. The ground there had once been dyed red with blood, turning into mountains of corpses and seas of blood. Resentment filled the air, and there were plenty of Holy Emperor experts among them. Afterwards, the greatest human expert, Tianyin, came there and personally cast down an extremely powerful formation that enveloped the land. Afterward, he moved all the corpses of the experts of the 3 races over there with his great ability, turning the place into a burial ground. In that age, there were even more Holy Emperor experts than there are Holy Emperor experts today. Countless Holy Emperors died in the battle, and there were countless Holy Emperors and Saint Rulers as well. With so many corpses buried together, the burial ground of the 3 races gradually changed. Many vengeful spirits and death curses appeared, and in the end, it became a dangerous place on the Tianyuan continent, becoming the death nest. Poseidon's voice was filled with melancholy. That period of time was just far, far too long ago. In other words, the formation of the death nest was caused by Senior Tianyin alone. Jianqin was very surprised. For some reason, Jianqin was shocked. He felt admiration for the abilities of the greatest human expert, Tianyin, once again. The death nest was the most dangerous place on the Tianyuan continent. He had never thought that it would be created by Tianyin alone. Poseidon slowly nodded. Tianyin's actions are rather strange. Although the corpses of the experts of the 3 races have piled up like mountains, there's no need for him to deal with them like this. Back then, he spent quite a lot of effort to create the death nest, even using a droplet of his essence, blood, to water the ground. There must be some other reason for his actions. Is it to grow the saint's fruit, a divine item that can allow people to reach Holy Emperor level? Poseidon's voice was filled with some confusion. He was also very perplexed by Tianyin's actions. Jianqin and Blackfish both understood something from Poseidon's words. They trembled as a sliver of surprise appeared in their eyes. Blackfish softly cried out, "Is the saint's fruit in the death nest related to the experts who died in battle in ancient times? Are they the ones who formed the saint's fruit?" "Correct. It's a special plant formed from the blood and essence of the corpses of those experts. The saint's fruit is called the saint's fruit because it can allow people to reach Holy Emperor level. Otherwise, it would be called the demonic fruit, said Poseidon. Jianqin was greatly shocked. He had never thought that the saint's fruit would be formed in such a way. It was unbelievable. The saint's fruit contains the essence of the holy emperor experts from ancient times, as well as the truths of the world from holy emperor level. Saint rulers are unable to digest it, so only holy emperors can consume it. Over 100,000 years ago, a human holy emperor obtained the saint's fruit and gave it to his son who had just broken through to holy emperor level. In the end, his son became a holy emperor within 100 years. However, most of the saint's fruits were consumed by those who had reached great perfection but were unable to break through to holy emperor level. In the end, all of them reached holy emperor level except for one person who failed, and they all broke through 3 to 5 minor levels, reaching the 3rd or 5th heavenly layer of the holy emperor level. Poseidon explained, the saint's fruit would only appear once every 40,000 years, so she had witnessed over 20 of them in her life. She understood the wondrous effects of the saint's fruit even better than the protector clans that had existed for a very long time. There are countless vengeful spirits in the death nest. They're all people of the 3 races who died in battle during ancient times. Fortunately, they've been trapped by Mo Tianyin's formation, or the entire world would be in trouble once they escaped, aside from Mercenary City and the sea realm I protect. The death nest is divided into 3 parts. The vengeful spirits in the death nest are all saint kings. The vengeful spirits of saint rulers and holy emperors move around in the 1st layer, so they won't pose much of a threat to you. The 3rd layer is the true danger zone, where the vengeful spirits of holy emperors and holy emperors live. There are quite a lot of them, so even holy emperors can die if they're trapped. At the same time, there's a powerful existence in the depths of the 3rd layer, but it slumbers all year round and rarely wakes up. You have to be careful and not alarm it. The saint's fruit grows in the 3rd layer. I've told you everything I need to tell you, so it's up to you to decide whether you want to go to the death nest or not. Poseidon's illusionary figure slowly vanished. He came and went without a trace, leaving no traces behind. Jianqin and Black Fish did not notice that Poseidon had already left. Both of them were thinking about what Poseidon had said at the end. There was an unbelievable existence hidden in the depths of the 3rd layer. A powerful existence? Is it a peak holy emperor? Jianqin said with a heavy voice. He felt rather chilled inside. He understood just how powerful peak holy emperors were. Fairy Haoyue was a very good example. A single formation was enough to trap a group of holy emperors. Even Black Fish was unable to shake it. Poseidon is an origin realm expert who has surpassed the holy emperor. If even she says it's a powerful existence, then the vengeful spirit must be extraordinary. It must have been a peak holy emperor when it was alive, Rue Jean said with a heavy voice. He was stern. The difference in strength between holy emperors was extremely great, just like the difference between a holy emperor at the 1st heavenly layer and holy emperor at great perfection. Jianqin, are you going to the death nest? Black Fish asked Jianqin after a moment of silence. Jianqin lowered his head in silence. He thought of the Grand Elder of Mercenary City, Tianjian. Tianjian had assisted him several times in the past and had shown him great kindness. Now that there was not much time left, it would be very difficult for him to break through to great perfection and become a holy emperor through his own efforts in this generation, where it was difficult to become a holy emperor. I'll go. I must go. Jianqin's gaze became determined at that moment. Without Tianjian's assistance in the past, he would not be who he was right now. Senior Tianjian has been silently and selflessly helping me along the way, but I've never done anything for Senior Tianjian. So what if I risk my life just to help Senior Tianjian this time? Jianqin clenched his fists as he became determined. Then this old man will go with you. Let's go see the death nest filled with vengeful spirits. Hee, this old man has lived for so long, but I've never seen anything like this before. Blackfish smiled. Afterwards, Jianqin entered the artifact space and found Ruijin and Honglian. He told them everything he had learned from Poseidon without hiding anything. Chapter 2097. Every moment, the saint's fruit will allow a holy emperor to become a holy emperor. Now that the saint's fruit has reappeared, it looks like another holy emperor will appear on the Tianyuan continent before long. This is a blessing for our Tianyuan continent. Afterward, she looked back at Changyang-hu and said, Changyang-hu, just stay here and have some peace and quiet. I really do hope that you can sever your ties with the mortal world as soon as possible and break free from the shackles of the mortal world. With that, the pavilion master made her way outside. Changyang, whose eyes were filled with struggle, but it would be replaced by confusion at times. He seemed to be at a loss for what to do, as if he had lost his direction, unable to find his path. Suddenly, Changyang, who looked at the pavilion master's figure that was about to disappear from the secret room. He said, Pavilion master, I want to go home and take a look. Changyang-hu, are you worried about your family? The pavilion master paused and asked without even looking back. It's been many years since I've been home. I wonder how my family is doing right now. There's also my brother, sister, and the others. Changyang, who showed a rare sliver of longing in his eyes. Your worries are unnecessary. Changyang Prefecture is like the midday sun right now, and your brother has become a peak expert renowned across the continent. The pavilion master gently sighed. But I still want to go back and take a look. I want to see my mother, said Changyang-hu. The pavilion master fell silent for a while before saying, Go back. Experience the mortal world once more. It might be of some help to you. Changyang, who immediately left the pavilion. The pavilion master did not let Changyang, who directly return through a space gate. Instead, she let him travel alone from Changyang Prefecture, crossing the great distance to return to the kingdom of Jessen with his own abilities. After Changyang, who left, a middle-aged man with an ordinary appearance arrived before the pavilion master. He clasped his hands and said, Pavilion master, this place is very far from the kingdom of Jessen. Changyang, who will definitely encounter some difficulties along the way. Wu Xin, protect Changyang, who secretly only act when his life is in danger, said the pavilion master. Yes, pavilion master. With a single movement, Wu Xin suddenly vanished. He had already pursued Changyang, who extremely quickly. The pavilion master of the Pure Heart Pavilion returned to the extremely simple and crude meeting hall. The hall was already filled with people, and all of them were important figures of the Pure Heart Pavilion. Pavilion master, the saint's fruit that only appears once every 40,000 years has already ripened. How should we deal with it? Should we take part in the competition? A white-haired old man stood up and asked the pavilion master. The pavilion master, Wu Qin, sat cross-legged on a very old futon with a calm expression. Our Pure Heart Pavilion cultivates the pure heart art. We must achieve a state of pure heart and few desires. We mustn't be confused by external matters. According to the records, when the saint's fruit appeared on the Tianyuan continent in the past, our Pure Heart Pavilion did not take part in the competition. At most, a few seniors would enter the death nest with a few experts to study its mysteries. This time, we still won't take part. At the same time, a huge blade soared through the air in the forbidden grounds of the tyrant's blade school. It actually hovered 3 meters above the ground as it shone with a dazzling light. A burly, middle-aged man in tight clothes sat cross-legged on Skyblade's hilt. Pure energy flowed out from Skyblade before being sucked into the middle-aged man's body like a whale sucking in water. He was the ancestor of the tyrant's blade school, Guihai Yi Dao. He was currently absorbing the energy within the Emperor armament to cultivate. Over 100 Emperor armaments had fused with the weapon over the years, so the energy gathered within had reached an extremely terrifying level. Even the Holy Emperor at great perfection would struggle to control it and would suffer an extremely powerful backlash. However, as the true master of the Emperor armament, Gui Hai Yidao could control the emperor armament like an extension of his arm, even though he was not as powerful as the Holy Emperor at great perfection. Suddenly, Gui Hai Yidao's eyes snapped open. Immediately, two terrifying streaks of light shot out from his eyes. They pierced through space, causing the space before him to shatter, reducing it to chaos. However, the scene within the death nest clearly appeared in the chaotic space. The space constantly twisted, making it difficult to discern what was going on. However, there was a powerful 9-colored light that flickered. "What's this?" Gui Hai Yidao's expression changed. He struggled to maintain his composure. Only a while later did he sigh in amazement. What a powerful formation! What heaven-defying methods! Who cast this down? A few figures flew over from afar with lightning-like speed. Gui Hai Yidao's gaze returned to normal, and the space he had pierced through returned to normal as well. The people who had come were the chalk great elders of the Tyrant's Blade School. They knelt down outside the forbidden grounds with great respect. One of them politely said, "Ancestor, the saint's fruit that only appears once every 40,000 years has ripened. Please allow us to leave the mountain and head to the death nest to obtain the saint's fruit so that you can recover your cultivation as the Holy Emperor." The saint's fruit? What's that? Gui Hai Yidao was rather curious. He did not belong to the same generation as Emo Tianyin, and he had just returned to the Protector clan, so he obviously did not know much about what had happened to Emo Tianyin in the past. The great elders of the Tyrant's Blade School explained the matter of the saint's fruit in detail. But Gui Hai Yidao did not show any joy when he heard that the fruit could allow people to become saint emperors. He seemed extremely nonchalant. He said, "I have no use for the saint's fruit, but it's still useful to you. You can go." The chalk great elders rejoiced. They could already tell that their ancestor did not need the saint's fruit to become a saint emperor, so they were obviously overjoyed and overjoyed. The grand chalk elders of the Tyrant's Blade School all left. After they left, Gui Hai Yidao also left the forbidden grounds. He entered the library of the Tyrant's Blade School by himself and carefully read through the records regarding Emo Tianyin and the Death Nest. At the same time, the experts from the Changyang Prefecture, the Mayuan clan, the Yangjizong, the Shenshao sect, the Patian sect, the Iyuan sect, the Heaven's Incense School, and the Heartless School all left. They ripped open space gates and hurried to the death nest. Other than them, the supreme experts of Mercenary City moved as well. Tianjin was not the only great perfection expert of the Holy Emperor. There were a few other old men who had always remained in Mercenary City and had only appeared during the invasion of the 100 Races. They were about to reach the end of their lifespans, so they all wanted to use the saint's fruit to break through to the Holy Emperor realm. A few ancient clans with great heritages had records regarding the saint's fruit as well. All the Holy Emperor experts in their clans hurried over. Chapter 2098. Jianqin was being carried by the great elders of Changyang Prefecture. They shot off into the distance as quickly as they could. They had all reached the level of Holy Emperor many years ago, so their grasp over space was far greater than Jianqin's. As they moved at full speed, they were much faster than Jianqin when he used the illusory flash. At this moment, the great elders of Changyang Prefecture were all stern. All they cared about was flying towards the stable space in the distance. They all knew that if they took Jianqin away like this, they would basically become the public enemy of all the human experts. Although they were great elders of protector clans and possessed great statuses, no one would fear their status before the saint's fruit that could allow people to reach Saint Emperor. The desire to become a Holy Emperor was something that every single Holy Emperor could not resist. As long as they could become Saint Emperors, they would not even need to fear the protector clans, so there was obviously no need to worry about offending them. Behind them, a large group of human experts pursued them. In particular, the eyes of those who knew about the wonders of the saint's fruit had become bloodshot. A portion of them had already used secret techniques to quickly catch up, rapidly closing the distance between them and Jianqin's group. Honglian, Ruijin, and Black Fish each kept a holy emperor busy, preventing them from interfering with Jianqin. They were unable to pay attention to anything else, borrowing the force of the world, stellar shift. The great elders of Changyang Prefecture used a secret technique again, crossing over 100 kilometers in a single moment. Afterward, they continued to flee with Jianqin. Using a secret technique like this consumed a lot of energy, not to mention that they were carrying a person. As a result, they were unable to use it continuously even with their strength. They would need some time to use it each time. As the two parties fled, they crossed over 1,000 kilometers before finally arriving in a relatively stable space. Afterward, Changyang Qingyun immediately began to construct a space gate. At the same time, over a dozen tremendous strands of energy and sword qi shot behind them with lightning-like speed. Every single attack possessed devastating power. These were attacks from over a dozen great perfection, holy emperor experts. They came from protector clans, ancient clans, and a few powerful independent cultivators. The tremendous attacks shot toward the space gate with an unstoppable force. Wherever they passed, the space violently shook, as if it was about to shatter from the powerful energy. As a result, the space gate constructed by Changyang Qingyun was affected, becoming rather unstable. "Let's go!" Changyang Qingyun sternly called out. He was in a hurry. The great elders of Changyang Prefecture all became extremely stern. Without any hesitation, they immediately entered the space gate with Jianqin as quickly as they could. After all of them had left through the space gate immediately vanished as well, causing the space there to return to its original state. Afterward, the attacks from the Holy Emperor experts struck the space there as well, shattering it. The space in a radius of several thousand meters violently shook. Bastards! Those bastards from Changyang Prefecture actually managed to escape. I never thought that the saint's fruit would end up in the hands of Changyang Prefecture in the end. Looks like a new Holy Emperor will appear on the Tianyuan continent before long. It's just a pity that he's not a part of our clan. He's from Changyang Prefecture. Sigh, the saint's fruit that only appears once every 40,000 years. It's a sacred item that many of our seniors can only come across by luck, yet we've missed it just like that. What a pity! What a pity! It's all the fault of those 3 stray magical beasts that don't belong to the beast god continent. If it weren't for them protecting Jianqin wholeheartedly, how would the saint's fruit have ended up in the hands of Changyang Prefecture? Now, not only has Changyang Prefecture gained an unprecedented prodigy of talent, they even have an extraordinary relationship with the winged tiger, coupled with the future Holy Emperor. Is there anyone left on the Tianyuan continent who can stop them? Many of the experts discussed. Many of them were filled with regret and disappointment, while some of the experts from the protector clans became worried. The strength of Changyang Prefecture had completely exceeded what they had imagined. They did not wish for any of the protector clans to become dominant. Boom! 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 With a few violent booms, violent ripples of energy shot out in all directions, causing the surrounding space to violently tremble. The supreme might that belonged to the Holy Emperor filled the surroundings, causing the world to tremble. Song Cheong stood proudly in the air. His whole body emitted an unparalleled divine aura as if he was the ruler of the world. He used his absolute strength to break the secret technique used by the 5 elders of Mercenary City. That unparalleled divine aura that was as vast as the sea directly crushed over, causing Mo Tianyun's illusory figure to collapse. The 5 elders of Mercenary City trembled violently as they spat out a mouthful of blood at the same time. It turned into a bloody mist that drifted down from the sky. Their faces immediately became extremely pale and dispirited. Following that, the light in the eyes of 4 of them rapidly faded, becoming hollow. Their bodies fell straight to the ground, motionless. Only one of them could barely remain standing. The founding member below stared fixedly at Sangcheong, who had broken free. He said powerlessly, It's just a pity that the 5 of us have already run out of fuel. Otherwise. Before he could finish speaking, the light in the eyes of the remaining founding member rapidly faded as well. He left the world with regret. Tianjin and the elders of Mercenary City stood in the distance, silently as they stared at the cold corpses of the founding members. They were all gloomy and sorrowful. They did not stop the 5 founding members because they did not have much time left in the first place. Even if they did not die here today, they would pass away in Mercenary City in the next few days. The deaths of the 5 founding members have protected the Saints' fruit for the continent. Their deaths are more important than anything. They died on the battlefield in a grand fashion, not silently passing away in Mercenary City, Tianjin said with a heavy voice. The Holy Emperor of the Peng clan, Songqiong, slowly withdrew his might. He glanced around indifferently and said, "The Saint's fruit has already been taken away and its whereabouts are unknown. It's time for us to return." Although Songqiong's voice was calm, it reverberated through the surroundings, allowing everyone to hear him clearly. "No, Songqiong, we must obtain the Saint's fruit. You're the fastest in the world, so you should be able to catch up to them," Lankiros said reluctantly. However, before he could finish speaking, Songqiong had already flown off into the distance as a faint blur. He seemed to have completely fused with the surrounding space, moving through it silently. He moved with unbelievable speed, disappearing in a single instant. He was headed for the Beast God continent. Songqiong, Lankiros, roared at the sky. He was extremely unwilling to accept this. Even Kaiser's face became extremely sunken. "Let's go." Kaiser gave the order to retreat through gritted teeth. He immediately abandoned his opponent and left with Lankiros. This time, Honglian and Blackfish did not continue to tangle with them. They allowed them to leave before charging in the direction of Ruijin. The Path Lord raised an eyebrow and said, "Golden Divine Dragon, our battle ends here. Farewell." With that, he wanted to leave. "You won't be able to leave that easily." Ruijin's voice was icy cold. His killing intent was heavy as the sacred dragon's sword shone brightly, firmly entangling the Path Lord. "Fiery purgatory!" A cry rang out from afar. Honglian had already hurried over. The scorching godfire hairpin spat out a large amount of white flames that filled space, forming a huge fireball that surrounded Ruijin and the Path Lord. The terrifying temperature caused space to violently pulse. Even though the Path Lord had grasped the mysteries of the world even more profound than the Holy Emperor, he was unable to use any ability related to space to escape from this unstable space. Soon after, the scorching godfire hairpin entered the fireball and shot toward the Path Lord with lightning-like speed. Chapter 2099. The Path Lord's face suddenly changed. He was still injured right now, having yet to recover from the wounds he had received from the barrier spirit of Mercenary City. He could temporarily protect himself against Ruijin in his current state, but he was not completely confident that he could escape unscathed if the 3 of them attacked him at the same time. What troubled him the most was that Ruijin, Heiyu, and Heiyu were all protected by origin energy treasures. Even someone as powerful as the Holy Emperor would struggle to injure them, and even his famed way of the 7 emotions and 6 desires was unable to affect Ruijin, Heiyu, and Heiyu who were protected by origin energy pearls. Their origin energy weapons all possessed origin energy, which was a great power that only experts who had surpassed the Holy Emperor could grasp. It was a power that belonged to a whole new level of power. Once injured by this power, even an expert like the Holy Emperor would struggle to endure it. The Path Lord became extremely stern. He used the Holy Emperor's ability to control the power of the world to send 3 palm strikes at Ruijin, Heiyu, and Heiyu. Each strike possessed tremendous power and contained the mysteries of the world that the Holy Emperor had grasped. Even a peak expert at great perfection like the Holy Emperor would be as insignificant as an ant before such power. They would not be able to endure it at all. Ruijin, Honglian, and Blackfish showed no fear. They aggressively attacked the Path Lord. Before their origin energy weapons, the Path Lord's peerlessly powerful attacks were nothing. They were all dispersed by their origin energy weapons. Without slowing down at all, the 3 origin energy weapons all shone with eternal light as they shot toward the Path Lord. Ruijin, Heiyu, and Heiyu all hated the Path Lord to the extreme, so they used their full strength this time. The 3 origin energy weapons shot over in a triangular formation, radiating with tremendous presences that caused space to freeze. They had already locked onto the Path Lord's presence. The Path Lord struggled to maintain his composure from before. He suddenly bellowed out, "Do you really think I'm that easy to bully?" Immediately, a vast and surging storm of energy erupted from his body, forming a hurricane of energy that wreaked havoc in all directions. It caused space to tremble and tear open one spatial crack after another. A ball of extremely pure and powerful energy had condensed in his hands. He avoided the surging Ruijin and Honglian and took the initiative to approach Blackfish. One of his hands seemed to have fused with space, creating a dreamlike blur in the air. It struck Blackfish's hand with seemingly slow but extremely fast speed. It was not a clash between a hand and an origin energy weapon. Instead, it struck the side of Blackfish's hand, knocking it off its mark. The force was so great that it caused Blackfish's arm to become numb. The Path Lord's other hand landed on Blackfish's chest with lightning-like speed. Powerful energy erupted from his hand, sending Blackfish flying far away. His origin energy armor flickered rapidly, blocking the power from the Path Lord's strike. The Path Lord immediately charged out through the opening. He knew that it would be very difficult for him to injure Ruijin and the other 2 who were protected by origin energy armor. He would not be able to gain any benefits if he continued fighting with his heavily injured body. At this moment, a terrifyingly high temperature swept over from behind. The scorching Godfire hairpin had already flown over from behind with a ball of terrifying white flames. It moved extremely quickly, almost reaching the Path Lord's back. The Path Lord no longer had the time to dodge. He turned around and hurriedly struck out with his hand, controlling the energy in the surroundings to block the hairpin's attack. However, the Path Lord had only struck out in a hurry, so it was not powerful enough. The hairpin smashed through it like a hot knife through butter. It continued toward the Path Lord's face. The Path Lord's eyes narrowed. With a wave of his hand, a divine hall immediately flew out of his space ring. It expanded from the size of a fist to the size of a house in a single instance, blocking the Path Lord's path. In the end, the scorching Godfire hairpin struck the divine hall, erupting with a deafening boom. The entire divine hall shook violently as cracks rapidly spread across the surface. However, at this moment, a resplendent golden light suddenly flickered behind the Path Lord. Ruijin had silently arrived behind the Path Lord at a certain time. He wielded his sword with his right hand as he formed a seal with his left hand. The sacred dragon's sword stabbed toward the Path Lord as a golden streak of light. The Path Lord was surprised when he sensed the situation behind him. Ruijin had appeared far too suddenly, and he had failed to sense him at all. He sighed inside. The various abilities and secret techniques of the dragon race really are wondrous. Although he thought about it, the Path Lord's reaction was extremely fast. With the abilities of the Holy Emperor, he directly ignored the rippling space and fused with the space there in an attempt to dodge Ruijin's attack. Secret technique of the dragon race, spatial lock. At that crucial moment, Ruijin suddenly pressed his left hand gently against the space there, causing the space before him to instantly freeze up. It became as tough as a rock. Caught off guard, the Path Lord was affected as well. He froze up and became immobilized. However, in the next moment, the Path Lord used his supreme strength to shatter the frozen space, forcefully breaking through Ruijin's secret technique. However, he had already lost the best opportunity to dodge due to the delay. Rui Jin's sacred dragon's sword stabbed into his body mercilessly, piercing through his chest from his back. A grunt rang out from the path lord's throat. Having the sacred dragon's sword pierced through his chest with origin energy was definitely not a pleasant feeling. The wounds he had suffered were far greater than usual. Bang! The path lord kicked backwards, landing on Rui Jin's chest with great accuracy. He sent Rui Jin flying far away and pulled the sacred dragon's sword out of his chest. The path lord's white robes had already been dyed red with blood. His pale face became even paler as his wounds became even more severe. "Holy Emperor of the humans, die!" Honglian called out as flames surged around her. She made her way around the divine hall and continued to attack the path lord with the scorching godfire hairpin. Her cold eyes were filled with killing intent. The path lord rapidly retreated as he glanced at Rui Jin and Honglian with a sunken gaze. He gritted his teeth and said, "If it weren't for the fact that I was injured by the barrier spirit of Mercenary City and have yet to recover, the three of you wouldn't be able to harm me. However, if I want to leave, the three of you won't be able to stop me." The path lord retreated again and again, no longer making direct contact with Honglian and the other two. He slowly moved his hands with the profound truths of the world, as if he had established some sort of connection with the space around him. The two of them seemed to be resonating with each other. Shatter the space. Suddenly, the path lord of carnal desires bellowed out. Immediately, an extremely powerful force of the world surged out. The space before him began to shatter and collapse, turning into an eternal darkness. There was nothing inside. Chapter 2100. The matter at hand is to recover as soon as possible. I need to return to my peak condition in the shortest amount of time possible. Only then can I deal with the dangers that may come later. It's just a pity that Rui Jin and the other two aren't here. Otherwise, even if the great elders of Changyang Prefecture really do have ill intentions and want to steal my saint's fruit, I wouldn't have to be so afraid. It's just a pity that my current strength is nowhere near enough to contend against them, Jianchen thought. He cast down a barrier at the entrance of the cave and entered the artifact space to heal. In the blink of an eye, 2 days passed. During that time, everything in Changyang Prefecture was peaceful. The 7 great elders of Changyang Prefecture were all recovering their saint force in the ancestral hall. Jianchen had also remained in the artifact space for 2 days. He had already made a full recovery under the effects of the artifact spirit, and he had returned to his peak condition. I still can't go out right now. Once I do, it's extremely likely that they'll want the saint's fruit from me. If I don't give it to them, conflict will be unavoidable. I definitely won't be able to keep the saint's fruit with my current strength. The best method right now is to stall for time and hope that Rui Jin and the others can find me in time. At that time, I won't have to fear Changyang Prefecture anymore, Jianchen thought. He was currently in the independent space of Changyang Prefecture. It could be described as the safest place, but it could also be described as the most dangerous place. This was because there was an extraordinarily powerful Emperor armament that had been passed down for a very long time. Once the Emperor armament unleashed its might, he would not be able to fend it off even with his divine hall and saint artifact. Within the forbidden grounds of the Tyrant's Blade School, the 30-meter-tall wave-breaking blade hovered 3 feet above the ground with the tip pointed downwards and the hilt pointed upwards. It gave off a hazy glow. This glow was not like the glow of an ordinary jewel. Instead, it was a blade light that contained immense power. Vaguely, an extremely domineering blade, Qi, circulated around the wave-breaking blade. The founding ancestor of the Tyrant's Blade School, Guihai Dao, sat on the hilt of the wave-breaking blade in simple robes. He was completely enveloped by the terrifying light from the blade, so he was unharmed. It seemed like the wave-breaking blade was protecting him. Powerful and pure energy constantly surged from the blade. In the end, Guihai Dao sucked it all in like a whale sucking in water. His body seemed to be a bottomless pit. No matter how much energy entered his body, it was like a pebble sinking into the ocean. It could not be filled up. The emperor armaments of protector clans had always been known as forbidden weapons. They could not be touched unless absolutely necessary because they were just too powerful. They required several Holy Emperor-level experts to work together to barely control them, and they would even suffer a backlash from the Emperor armament, heavily injuring even Holy Emperor-level experts. This was more than enough to demonstrate the terror of the Emperor armament. However, no one had ever tried to absorb energy from the Emperor armament to cultivate. Even during the glorious era when Holy Emperor-level experts were born, they never dared to do so. Guihai Dao was the only person who dared to do so. As the energy from the Emperor armament was constantly absorbed, Guihai Dao's presence skyrocketed at basically every moment. It was so fast that it was shocking. His strength increased extremely quickly, so he did not need to comprehend the mysteries of the world. Recovering his memories was equivalent to recovering his former cultivation level. A few figures flew over from afar before kneeling outside politely in the end. They were the great elders of the Tyrant's Blade School. They were all dejected and gloomy. Founding ancestor, the disciples have returned. It's because of our incompetence that we failed to retrieve the saint's fruit, an old man said humbly. He was extremely unwilling to accept this. Guihai Dao slowly opened his eyes. His gaze seemed extremely calm right now, but a sharpness was hidden deep within. It was like a blade that was filled with sharpness and some dominance. He directly looked in the direction of the death nest, as if he wanted to see through space and see the distant world. It's fine. The saint's fruit isn't very important. It can indeed allow people to become emperors, but you can still break through to Holy Emperor level without it, Guihai Dao said in an extremely calm voice. But ancestor, reaching Saint Emperor is already extremely difficult. There's a gap in the Saint Emperors of our protector clans. We only have one Saint Emperor on the Tianyuan continent right now, and he only managed to reach Saint Emperor by forging a different path of cultivation through his own willpower, said a great elder bitterly. Guihai Dao glanced past them. The great elders all shivered inside when they were stared at by him. At that moment, they all felt like they had been locked onto by an extremely sharp blade. They actually felt a sliver of fear from the bottom of their hearts. The great elders of the Tyrant's Blade School were utterly astounded. At the same time, they felt even more admiration and fear for Guihai Dao. They knew that although Guihai Dao had only become a Saint King recently, his true strength was no longer something that could be judged from his appearance. I can make you emperors in 100 years at most, and a few decades at least. You've all been able to wait for this day, Guihai Dao nonchalantly said. However, his calm words were like a bolt from the blue in the ears of the Tyrant's Blade School's supreme elders. All of them felt that it was inconceivable. Founding ancestor, all of you are dismissed. Properly consolidate your foundations in the past few years. Guihai Dao interrupted the great elder. Yes, founding ancestor. Even though the great elders were doubtful, they did not dare to disobey Guihai Dao's orders. They all retreated politely. After they left, Guihai Dao looked in the direction of the death nest again. He murmured, "Just what is Mo Tianyin trying to do? He's actually expending so much effort to create the death nest. Even I cannot help but feel admiration for his methods." Chapter 2101. Ruijin's dragon's domain covered a radius of 1,000 kilometers. Only a few seconds had passed since the divine hall of the underworld sect had been destroyed, so even saint rulers would not be able to cross that distance in such a short amount of time. As a result, as soon as the dragon's domain was formed, it enveloped all the assassins of the underworld sect. No one could escape. The vice-sect master of the Blood Sword sect, Jiang Wang, the 5 elders, and the 4 protectors all caught up to the saint ruler assassins of the underworld sect. They fought without holding back at all. The saint rulers of the underworld sect all possessed darkness-attributed saint force. As soon as the battle began, they all erupted with a dense, black mist using a secret technique, enveloping a certain range of space. They silently moved through the black mist, constantly searching for good opportunities to launch sneak attacks on the experts of the Blood Sword sect. The saint rulers of the underworld sect mainly used darkness-attributed saint force to aid in their assassination, while the experts of the Blood Sword sect used baleful force as their trump card. Each had their own merits, but none of the people from the Blood Sword sect used baleful force in their battle against the saint rulers of the underworld sect. Baleful force could only be cultivated through slaughter, so it was just too precious to saint rulers. Even with that being the case, the experts of the Blood Sword sect still gained the upper hand because they were not affected by the dragon's domain at all. On the other hand, the saint rulers of the underworld sect were suppressed by the dragon's domain, so they struggled to use 70 to 80% of their strength. Bang! With a muffled sound, Jiang Wang, who was at the third heavenly layer of the Holy Emperor, casually struck the head of a saint ruler from the underworld sect. The saint ruler's head exploded on the spot, wiping out his soul. At the same time, an elder of the Blood Sword sect, who was a ninth heavenly layer saint ruler, killed an assassin from the underworld sect. A blood-red spike stabbed through the assassin's forehead before emerging from the back of his head. It pierced through his head, and his soul was wiped out before he could escape. Jianqin did not attack anymore. Instead, he stood with newbies and glared around. He was prepared to leave all the saint ruler assassins to Jiang Wang and the others. He could not be bothered to personally deal with the assassins below saint ruler. Strange, Jianqin. Why don't I see the guy whose arm you chopped off? Newbies crossed his arms as he hovered in the air beside Jianqin, his eyes constantly scanning the surroundings. Jianqin frowned slightly. He had also been waiting here for Luo Qi, but until now he had not discovered that Luo Qi had escaped from the shrine. Although the shrine was broken, the power of the shrine had not completely dissipated, so his consciousness could not enter the shrine. Could it be that Luo Qi is still hiding in the shrine? Jianqin murmured to himself. Although several thousand similarly dressed assassins had charged out of the shrine, none of them could escape his eyes with the senses of his soul. Luo Qi was nowhere to be found. "I'll go have a look inside the shrine," said Jianqin. He directly flew into the shrine. Newbies followed behind him. The shrine was completely dark. The darkness within the divine hall was extremely dense with darkness-attributed saint force. To people who cultivated darkness-attributed saint force, they would be able to achieve twice the results with half the effort if they cultivated here. However, since the divine hall had been destroyed, the darkness-attributed saint force that filled the divine hall was slowly dispersing. Even the divine hall energy within the divine hall was rapidly draining away. Jianqin and newbies stood in the dark shrine. They both frowned slightly because even the two of them were affected by the darkness. They could not see more than 5 meters. How can mere darkness-attributed saint force stump the great newbies? Newbies snorted coldly. Immediately, a dazzling golden light shone from his body, making him seem like a miniature sun in the dark shrine. The darkness-attributed saint force that flowed through the shrine dispersed as soon as it came in contact with the golden light. In the blink of an eye, the shrine that had been shrouded in darkness cleared up. This was a resplendent hall. It was empty except for a few expensive decorations. Jianqin directly ignored the decorations. He glanced around and said, "Luo Qi must still be hiding in the shrine. Let's look around first. We can't let him escape, or there'll be endless problems. Rui Jin and the other 2 seniors are standing guard outside, so we don't need to worry about Luo Qi taking advantage of us to enter the shrine and leave from another direction." Jianqin and newbies began to search the shrine. A small portion of the shrine's power remained on the walls, preventing Jianqin's senses from penetrating it. As a result, they could only search slowly. Along the way, Jian Chen came across passageways that had suddenly appeared, as well as formations that hid the surroundings. However, they were all destroyed by him and newbies. The toughness of the Divine Hall and the formations hidden within were all supported by the power of the Divine Hall. Now that the power of the Divine Hall was gradually dispersing, both the formations and the sturdiness of the Divine Hall had greatly weakened. At this moment, in an extremely well-hidden secret room within the darkness Divine Hall, a person with a single arm and shrouded in black robes stood with a short old man. The short old man was rather pale, but his eyes were brimming with life. Luo Qi, 2 people have already entered the shrine. They'll find us before long. So we need to leave as soon as possible, the old man said emotionlessly with a deep voice. Old sect master, are we just going to ignore the rest of the people from our underworld sect? Luo Qi asked with a hoarse voice. They were able to destroy the shrine in a single strike, so they must have an expert at the level of the Holy Emperor. Even in my peak condition, I would be powerless before an expert like that, not to mention that I'm still injured right now. This baleful Yin force really is powerful. 1,000 years ago, my soul was injured by Houston's baleful Yin force. Even after 1,000 years of recuperation, my soul still hasn't recovered, the old man said coldly. His voice was filled with intense hatred. Old sect master, all the people from the Bloodsword sect are outside the shrine right now. There are also 3 terrifying magical beasts. They'll definitely discover us as soon as we leave. How are we supposed to leave? Luo Qi asked. I already know about the situation outside. An expert has already used a supreme secret technique to envelop a radius of 1,000 kilometers. We definitely can't leave. Fortunately, we have a backup plan. I will probably die here today, the old man said in a deep voice. Afterward, darkness attributed Saint Force poured into the ground from beneath his feet. Gradually, an extremely complicated formation appeared beneath their feet. This is a space gate. Old sect master, can we leave the shrine with a space gate? The space within the shrine can't be ripped open, Luo Qi asked in doubt. The old man sneered with that. This is not a space gate. It's an ancient teleportation formation. The sect master of the underworld sect obtained it by accident several tens of thousands of years ago and cast it down here. It's all for the sake of preventing a destructive attack from our enemies in the future. It'll allow us to escape, and the teleportation formation will shatter once it's used, so we won't have to worry about being followed. Luo Qi rejoiced inside. He said, Old sect master, I'll go get the Saint Tyr battle skill first before leaving. There's no time. The 2 of them aren't far from here. We need to leave immediately or we won't be able to leave if they destroy the formation, said the old man. The teleportation formation was activated very soon. With a violent ripple of space, Luo Qi and the old man vanished as well. Several hundred meters away from the secret room, Jian Chen and newbies searched for them. The power of the shrine had become even thinner than before, so Jian Chen's soul could barely penetrate a few buildings. Just as Luo Qi and the old man left through the teleportation formation, Jian Chen's expression changed. He suddenly sensed an extremely weak ripple of space with the senses of his soul, so he quickly ran in the direction of the ripple without any hesitation. Boom! Arriving at the location of the spatial ripples, Jian Chen smashed through the door of a secret room with a single stroke. Without the obstruction of the door, the spatial ripples in the room became even more intense. However, there was not a single person in the room. There was only a damaged formation on the ground. Jian Chen sighed inside when he saw the formation. He said, We've come too late. Someone has already left through here. I never thought that they would be able to leave through a space gate in the Divine Hall. Newbies' face became rather sunken. He knew extremely well what it meant for a holy emperor of the 5th heavenly layer to escape. It would be extremely troublesome if the expert decided to take revenge without any regard for the consequences, not to mention the fact that the person was an assassin of the holy emperor who was skilled in assassination. Jianchen, what do we do? Nubis' expression was very ugly. His relationship with Jianchen had already developed to that of best friends. So he obviously treated Jianchen's matters as his own. Jianchen furrowed his brows in thought before relaxing. His greatest worry was Changyang Prefecture and some of his friends in the Flame Mercenaries. However, Changyang Prefecture had Changyang Zushao, who was comparable to the Holy Emperor at great perfection. It could be said that the entire kingdom of Jessen was impregnable. As for the Flame Mercenaries, he planned on asking one of the 3 Ruijin or Yu to take care of it. He only needed to place the Bright Moon Divine Hall in the Flame Mercenaries, and he would not have to worry about Bai Lian and the others. Afterwards, Jianchen and Nubis continued to search through the shrine. Very soon, they found a huge stone slab embedded in the wall in a secret room next door. To Jianchen's surprise, it was actually a complete Saint tier battle skill. Jianchen began to collect the Saint tier battle skill without any hesitation. After expending a tremendous amount of effort, he finally removed the huge stone slab. Although the slab was only 5 meters long, it was extraordinarily heavy. It was countless times heavier than steel, so even with Jianchen's strength, he needed to expend quite a bit of effort to lift it. Chapter 2102. My true identity is not important. I naturally have my methods of returning here. Jianchen smiled faintly. Mo Tianyin said with a faint smile. He was very carefree. Then he looked at the 3 broken saint tools below him. With a gentle wave of his arm, the broken saint tools, which were still covered by a thin layer of cloth, immediately flew up from below and hovered beside Mo Tianyin. Protector Shui's gaze was sharp as she stared at Mo Tianyin. However, she did not stop Mo Tianyin's actions. Mo Tianyin's indifferent gaze swept across the 3 halves of the saint artifacts. The thin layer of ice around the saint artifacts actually turned into liquid at a visible rate and dripped down from the saint artifacts. However, when the liquid dripped onto the ice below, it did not solidify into solid ice. Instead, it seemed to contain an extremely terrifying heat. It actually melted deep holes into the incredibly hard ice on the ground. In the blink of an eye, the thin layer of ice on the 3 broken saint artifacts had vanished. The suppressed light on the saint artifacts shone once more, but it was extremely dim. Mo Tianyin slowly extended his hand and gently stroked the broken parts of the saint artifacts. His hand did not give off any ripples of energy, making it seem ordinary. However, under his touch, the 3 saint artifacts slowly healed. In just a short while, Rui Jin's sacred dragon sword, Hong Lian's scorching godfire heavenly hairpin, and Heiyu's mountain-splitting blade had all been restored. They had become whole again after being split in half. At the same time, the origin energy radiating from the 3 saint artifacts was even denser than before. Protector Shui's eyes suddenly narrowed when she saw this. Disbelief filled her face. Destroying a low-level saint artifact was a piece of cake for an expert of her level, but repairing a saint artifact was not an easy task. However, Mo Tianyin had actually repaired the broken saint artifacts in just a few seconds. Just that alone was not something she could do. After the saint artifacts were repaired, Mo Tianyin pointed his finger at Ruijin and the others 3 times. With 3 clear explosions, the thin layer of ice around Ruijin and the others exploded, scattering into shards of ice. However, Ruijin, Honglian, and Blackfish did not recover. Not only had the ice frozen them, but it had also frozen their vitality, energy, and even their souls. However, the layer of ice around them had shattered, so the cold chi that had invaded their bodies was immediately cut off. Without being replenished in time, the cold chi rapidly weakened. The frozen vitality and energy in their bodies began to slowly recover. Their souls had always been protected by the pearl that could block soul attacks. Although they had lost their senses of the outside world, they could clearly sense the rapidly weakening cold chi in their bodies. The 3 of them did not hesitate at all. They immediately tried their best to control the energy in their bodies to purge the cold qi that was gradually weakening them. Under their full-powered counterattack, the remaining cold qi in their bodies dispersed very quickly, allowing Ruijin, Honglian, and Blackfish to finally regain their freedom. Ruijin, Honglian, and Heiyu immediately opened their eyes. The first thing they saw was a white-robed person with his back to them, facing off against Protector Shui of the Ice Goddess Hall. Their origin energy weapons also hovered before the person. Ruijin, Heiyu, and Heiyu looked at each other. Their eyes were filled with shock. They were not stupid. They immediately realized that the reason why they had been able to escape was because of this person. However, to their disbelief, in this age where even holy emperors were rare, there was actually more than one expert who had surpassed the Holy Emperor. This greatly impacted the three of them. The three saint artifacts hovering before Mo Tianyin flew to Ruijin, Heiyu, and Heiyu as three streaks of light. At the same time, Mo Tianyin's voice rang out. "Take your items and leave this place. Immediately find a place to enter seclusion. Don't come out until the Holy Emperor arrives. The Tianyuan continent will face a war soon, and the outcome will be unpredictable." "Yes, Senior." Ruijin, Honglian, and Blackfish politely bowed to Mo Tianyin before leaving with their saint artifacts. Even after they had left, the three of them were still trying to guess the identity of the man who had saved them. However, they did not dare to ask about a sovereign who had surpassed the Holy Emperor because they knew their limits. Before an expert like that, even the Holy Emperor was as insignificant as an ant, let alone a Holy Emperor at great perfection. Protector Shui did not even glance at Ruijin, Heiyu, and Heiyu. Her gaze never left Mo Tianyin as she icily said, "Mo Tianyin, have you come here just to save them?" Mo Tianyin shook his head and said, "I didn't spend so much effort to come down here to save them. However, I've brought some information about the Ice Goddess Hall. I think you'll be interested." Protector Shui's eyes narrowed, and even her breathing became rather ragged. She had already left the Saints' world for over 3 million years, so she had no idea about the Saints' world during that time. "What news? Tell me." Protector Shui's icy cold voice was rather urgent. She knew that Mo Tianyin had probably come down from the Saints' world, so he knew the latest news. However, she could vaguely sense that something was off from Mo Tianyin's words. Mo Tianyin said, "This might not be good news for you. Out of the 4 guards of the Ice Goddess Hall, only you, Shui Yunlan, endured the consequences of not being able to advance any further and came to the lower world to wait bitterly for the snow goddess in Samsara. Apart from you, Shui Yunlan, who is still a god king, the other 3 guards have all broken through God King and reached the primordial realm. So what? Wu Han, Bing Qin, and Kai Xiao's talent is no worse than mine. After all this time, it's only natural that they've broken through the Divine King and reached the primordial realm." Protector Shui said coldly. Protector Shui coldly said, "If this was the bad news Mo Tianyin was talking about, then she didn't need to be so nervous. If that's the case, then it really isn't a big deal. However, you probably never would have thought that Wu Han has already betrayed us. Bing Qin and Kai Xia have been trapped by Wu Han, and 2 of the 3 elders are dead, while one has fled with heavy injuries. Her whereabouts are unknown. The Ice Goddess Hall is basically under Wu Han's control now, and Wu Han has already entered the forbidden grounds of the Ice Goddess, heading to where the Ice Goddess recovers. She wants to attack the Ice Goddess while she's heavily injured," said Mo Tianyin. Protector Shui was shocked. The news that Mo Tianyin brought her was just too shocking. She found it hard to believe. Impossible. That's definitely impossible. Even if Wu Han has reached the primordial realm, she's only an infinite prime. How could she be bold enough to betray us? And the 3 elders of our Ice Goddess Hall are all chaotic primes. It's impossible for Wu Han to be their opponent no matter what. So how could she kill them? Protector Shui cried out. She had considered the possibility that Emo Tianyin was lying to her, but she also felt that it was impossible for Emo Tianyin to be naive enough to fool her with something so exaggerated. With Wu Han's strength, it's indeed impossible for her to do that. However, it's a different story if someone is assisting her, said Emo Tianyin. Who is it? Who is helping Wu Han? Protector Shui's voice had already become high-pitched. Her ice-cold eyes were filled with dense killing intent. Nan Patian, Emo Tianyin stressed every single syllable. Protector Shui's heart shivered. She said, Nan Patian. Is it that Nan Patian from the Moon God Hall? That's right. The Moon God has vanished. It's rumored that the Moon God has died after failing to become a Grand Prime. Now the Moon God Hall is under Nan Potion's control, and the 3 elders of the Ice Goddess Hall were ambushed by Nan Patian. 2 died and 1 was injured. Moreover, I've also learnt that Wu Han is having an affair with Nan Patian. Protector Shui shuddered when she heard that. Sorrow filled her eyes. If one could see her face, they would discover that she had become sheet white. The Ice Goddess Hall was filled with women, so all of them had to maintain their purity. If their bodies were tainted by men, it would be an unforgivable crime. In particular, if any of the 4 protectors were tainted by men, the 4 of them would be punished. Then, what's the situation with Her Majesty? Protector Shui asked urgently. She had already guessed that the person who had dealt with the Ice Goddess Hall was probably Nan Patian of the Moon God Hall. Although the forbidden grounds of the Ice Goddess were protected by powerful formations, Nan Patian was a chaotic prime after all. He definitely had something to rely on since he dared to touch the Ice Goddess. I don't know about that. That's all I know. If you don't want the Ice Goddess to end up in Nan Potion's hands, it's best if you don't return to the Saint's world. Even if you do return, you can't go to the Ice Goddess Hall, Emo Tianyin said sternly. Protector Shui calmed down very soon. The light in her cold eyes flickered as she stared at Emo Tianyin closely. She said, Emo Tianyin, why are you telling me this? Do you have some sort of relationship with our Ice Goddess Hall? Emo Tianyin's face suddenly sank. His face immediately became filled with malice. He growled, I have nothing to do with your Ice Goddess Hall, but Nan Patian has ruined my plans, so I obviously have to ruin his plans. Protector Shui came to a realization after hearing Emo Tianyin's explanation. No wonder Emo Tianyin had specially come over to tell her this. As it turned out, he had grievances with Nan Patian as well. Emo Tianyin continued, There's one more thing. You're not allowed to lay your hands on Genshin here. You're not allowed to interfere with any of Genshin's matters. You probably don't know about Genshin's identity. His existence is a potential threat to our Saint's world. Protector Shui replied coldly. She did not want to make any concessions on this matter. Emo Tianyin looked at Protector Shui scornfully and said, Shui Yinlan, I know even more than you, but I think you should be thinking about how the Ice Goddess Hall will survive this crisis instead of doing meaningless things. Moreover, with Genshin's relationship with the Ice Goddess, he might become a crucial figure for your Ice Goddess Hall to survive this crisis in the future. Humph! The Ice Goddess was injured by the immortal exalt of the Sword Sect of Violet Heavens. She still hasn't recovered even now. Our Ice Goddess Hall is facing this crisis all because of the immortal exalt of the Sword Sect of Violet Heavens. Our Ice Goddess Hall doesn't need the help of a successor of the Sword Sect of Violet Heavens. Protector Shui snorted coldly. Chapter 2103. After Emo Tianyin left, Imperial Bodyguard Shui remained in her original position. Her eyes flickered as she pondered. After a while, Imperial Bodyguard Shui sighed softly. Her expression was somewhat downcast as she muttered to herself, Wu Han, is what Emo Tianyin said true? Have you really betrayed His Majesty? But why did you do it? Imperial Bodyguard Shui's eyes revealed a sorrowful expression. She truly did not dare to accept the truth. Emo Tianyin said that Nan Patian has already taken control of the Moon God Hall, and the Moon God's daughter, Hao Yu, appeared on the Tianyuan continent several tens of thousand years ago. Did Nan Patian harm the moon god's daughter in order to take control of the moon god hall after she failed to break through to Grand Prime? Protector, Shui murmured to herself. She could vaguely sense that this matter was not as simple as it seemed on the surface. I never thought that the Ice Goddess Hall would face such a disaster in the past 3 million years. Originally, I planned on taking Her Majesty back to the Saint's world after Her Majesty's profound ice body matured and absorbed the power of the 3 ice souls. But it looks like I have to reconsider my plans now. If I were alone, I would naturally not regret my death, but Her Majesty cannot be harmed at all. After leaving the Ice Goddess Hall, Mo Tianyin directly arrived on Dragon Island. He hovered several hundred meters in the air as he looked down at the extremely large island. The 10-meter restriction on the island was like a decoration to him. On the Dragon Island, there were walking corpses everywhere on the island. They had no life, no consciousness, and similarly, they didn't have a limit to their lifespan. They had already turned into walking corpses for many years. Among them, a portion of the walking corpses were even left behind from ancient times. Mo Tianyin hovered in the air as he watched everything below silently. He sighed gently before turning into a streak of white light, flying toward the lunisolar cave with unbelievable speed. He passed through the formation at the bottom of the cave like he was taking a stroll and left. Mo Tianyin traversed the void through the formation and finally arrived in a desolate world. This world was vast and boundless, but it was filled with a thick, deathly stillness. As far as the eye could see, there was only desolation. There was not the slightest bit of vitality. Even the sky was gray, and there was no sunlight. This space is getting larger and larger. Mo Tianyin glanced around and sighed emotionally. Afterward, he took a step and vanished with a single movement. Who knew how far he had crossed with that step? He arrived at the bottom of a huge pit in a single instance. 2 balls of light, one black and one white, hovered before him. They were the Yin-Yang Saint rocks, condensed from Yin and Yang Qi. However, a dark red speck of light was hidden in the rocks. It was extremely eye-catching. Mo Tianyin stared at the speck of red light in the Yin-Yang Saint rock. He furrowed his brows and became extremely stern. He growled. I never thought that the evil presence hidden in the Yin-Yang Saint rock would become stronger and stronger. Even the Yin and Yang Qi can't suppress it. Instead, it's absorbing the power of the rock to strengthen itself. If it continues to grow like this, it'll lead to unimaginable consequences. It might even lead to a calamity of the world. I have no idea where this evil presence came from. It's actually hiding in the Yin-Yang Saint rock. Unless I detonate the power of the rock, I won't be able to destroy it. However, the sword spirits are here, so they should be able to deal with the evil presence. I just need to buy some time for them. Mo Tianyin sank into his thoughts when he reached there. A sliver of determination appeared in his eyes, and he said, Whatever. I'll give up on this clone and use its power to suppress the evil presence in the Yin-Yang Saint rock. With that, Mo Tianyin's body blurred. It turned into an extremely terrifying energy and split into 2. It carefully seeped into the Yin-Yang Saint rock and suppressed the evil presence. However, when Mo Tianyin's 2 strands of energy entered the Yin-Yang Saint rock, only 1/3 of it remained. 2/3 of it had been consumed by the power of the rock. 3 days passed in the blink of an eye. Jianqin currently sat in a completely sealed room in the territory of the Turtle Clan in the Sea Realm. Luminous pearls that glowed with a gentle light were embedded in the surroundings of the room, providing the dark room with a weak source of light. Jianqin held 2 half-petrified, high-class monster cores in his hand as he worked hard to absorb the energy that was about to solidify. A large pile of monster cores had already been drained of all their energy in a corner of the room. Most of them had already been turned into tough rocks. In the past few days, Jianqin had already absorbed a large amount of energy from the monster cores and refined it all into chaotic force. However, the increase in chaotic force was still negligible. When Jianshin's chaotic body was still at the first layer, he only needed a ruler armament or the skeleton of a saint ruler to refine a strand of chaotic force. However, as his chaotic body increased, the amount of energy required would increase by at least 10 times with each layer. Every layer of the chaotic body required the chaotic Naiden in his dantian to grow to the size of a fist. Just this process alone required who knew how many strands of chaotic force. As a result, if he wanted to increase his chaotic body to another layer, the amount of energy required would be far more terrifying than anyone could imagine. The 2 monster cores in Jianshin's hand were finally drained of all their energy. Only half a fist-sized rock remained. Jianshin casually tossed the 2 monster cores to the corner of the room. Just when he wanted to take out another 2 monster cores to continue cultivating, his eyes suddenly narrowed. He immediately became rather stern as he stared ahead, sharply. The space where Jianshin was looking at distorted by an undetectable amount. An illusionary person with a blurry appearance slowly appeared. In the beginning, he was only a faint shadow, but in a few seconds he had basically solidified. However, he still seemed rather illusionary. Jianshin suddenly stood up. He stared at the uninvited guest who had silently appeared before him and growled, "Sir, who are you?" Although Jianshin knew that the person before him was only a manifestation of his soul, he still did not dare to be careless. He was filled with caution. He could clearly sense that the person's soul was far more powerful than his. He was definitely a holy emperor, and his soul was much more powerful than regular holy emperors. You can call me the Hall Master of the Heavens Spirit Hall, but how should I refer to you? Should I call you the ruler of the Turtle Clan, Jianshin, or Changyang Shoten? The Hall Master asked in an extremely indifferent tone. Jianshin was surprised. Only the people of the Tianyuan continent knew the name Changyang Shoten. Since the Hall Master of the Heavens Spirit Hall knew this name, he had probably investigated his identity on the Tianyuan continent thoroughly. Jianshin's expression did not change at all. He smiled calmly and clasped his hands at the Hall Master. "So it's the esteemed Hall Master of the Heaven Spirit Hall. Jianshin greets you." The Hall Master studied Jianshin for a while before chuckling. "Jianshin, I never thought that a human like you would possess the ruler's presence that only the people of the sea race possess. It really does surprise me, the Emperor. What has surprised me even more is that you've clearly reached the level of the Holy Emperor, yet you can still enter the barrier of the sea realm as you please. The Emperor is really very curious about your relationship with her for her to help you so selflessly. Hall Master, as for why I possess the ruler's presence of the Turtle Clan, it's probably because I accidentally ingested the Naiden of a ruler of the Turtle Clan in the Sea Realm. It's even easier to explain my ability to enter and leave the Sea Realm as I please. Everyone knows that the barrier that envelopes the Sea Realm only stops foreign experts at the level of the Holy Emperor. Although I can display the strength of a 16th star expert when I use all my abilities, my comprehension of the mysteries of the world remains at the 9th heavenly layer of Saint Ruler. In a certain sense, I'm not a Holy Emperor, so I'm obviously not within the range of the barrier. However, I don't understand your last sentence." Jianshin explained in a composed manner. Although he knew that his explanation would not be of much use, the Hall Master would definitely continue to question him about why Poseidon would help an outsider for no reason if he admitted that he had received secret assistance from Poseidon. Jianshin had already vaguely guessed that Poseidon had sent him into the worldly ebb to find something for her to reconstruct her body, but he could not let the Hall Master and Hall Master of Dragon God Temple know about this secret. The two of them knew that Poseidon's soul was still alive and was still hiding in the Supreme Divine Hall. They both wanted to head to the Divine Hall to retrieve Poseidon's soul and devour it so that their strength could increase even further. They might even be able to reach Poseidon's level in the past. However, Poseidon's Divine Hall had always drifted through the sea of despair. It was impossible to find it without a key, and even if they did find it, they would not be able to open it. The abyssal crystal was the only key to finding and opening the Divine Hall. Chapter 2104. A resplendent light immediately flashed through the Spirit King's eyes when he saw that. The dark metal sword beside him immediately erupted with a dazzling, silver-white light. An extremely powerful sword intent immediately permeated the surroundings. Under the influence of the powerful sword intent, the wild winds, the air, and even the dense energy of the world seemed to become strands of invisible sword chi. Swish! The dark metal sword was enveloped by the silver-white light. It shot into the tunnel with lightning-like speed as a white streak of light, disappearing from sight. The tunnel that connected the world of Forsaken Saints to Mercenary City was filled with extremely violent streams of energy, causing the tunnel to become extremely unstable. The entire tunnel would distort from time to time. At this moment, a dazzling, silver-white light flashed through the tunnel. It flew through the tunnel with extreme speed. It was the Spirit King's dark metal sword. The dark metal sword seemed like nothing special at all, but it possessed great power. It was far more powerful than the Emperor armaments of the Tian-Yuan continent. Even the Emperor armaments of the Protector clans could not be compared to it. As the dark metal sword passed by, the tunnel that was already rather unstable immediately began to violently tremble. However, it did not shatter at all. On the other side of the spatial tunnel, a seal that looked like a spider web covered the exit of the tunnel. The black iron sword was wrapped in a layer of silver-white sword light, and it passed through the spatial tunnel with lightning speed, fiercely colliding with the seal that blocked the exit. Boom! With a deafening boom, the jet-black metal sword struck the center of the seal. The powerful force pushed the seal into the shape of a cone. Immediately after, a powerful sword light erupted from the jet-black metal sword, turning into a dense rain of attacks that bombarded the seal. It began to wildly destroy the seal. The seal immediately began to flicker violently. The energy that maintained the seal was being consumed at an extremely terrifying rate. Xiao Ling immediately became extremely nervous. She pressed her hands against the seal as origin energy constantly poured into it. She did her best to maintain the final seal. However, even with Xiao Ling maintaining the seal with her own energy, the seal was only able to block the Spirit King's attacks after some difficulty. Although the seal was powerful, it could only block attacks from reciprocity experts. Once it encountered an attack from a godhood expert, even the weakest godhood expert would break through it. Although the Spirit King was still at reciprocity, he possessed the power to fight against the weakest godhood expert. The seal could not last at all before the Spirit King, who possessed supreme battle prowess. If it were not for Xiao Ling's efforts, the Spirit King probably would have destroyed the seal long ago. Even so, Xiao Ling couldn't hold on for much longer, because the energy that had been accumulated for countless years in this underground space was almost depleted. What do we do now? Master, where are you? Come back quickly. If you don't come back, the seal will be destroyed by that bad guy. That bad guy is so powerful that I can't beat him. Master, please come out quickly. Xiao Ling sighed in relief. She sobbed, oh no, no. All the energy to maintain the seal is gone. What do we do? Master, where are you? Come back quickly. If you don't come back soon, the seal will be destroyed by that bad guy. That bad guy is so powerful that I can't beat him. Master, please come out quickly. The Spirit King stood at the peak of the world mountains in the world of Forsaken Saints, as if he was the only thing in the world. At this moment, the gloomy, dark sword flew out of the tunnel. It seemed to possess a mind of its own, directly flying into the Spirit King's hand without anyone controlling it. It's time. At this moment, the Spirit King growled. Suddenly, a supreme presence flooded out from his body. He slowly levitated into the air, hovering 10 meters above the ground. He radiated with a terrifying energy that was enough to make the world tremble. At that moment, the Spirit King seemed to have transformed into a mighty Spirit King. He stood there with his sword in hand, causing the sky to tremble. Behind the Spirit King, the several dozen Origin Realm experts all stared at the Spirit King in fear. All of them felt a tremendous and unstoppable pressure from the Spirit King. Even the 8 returnants experts were no exception. All of them felt like they could not defeat the Spirit King. Seal-breaking style. Suddenly, the Spirit King bellowed out. Pure origin energy surged from his body into the sword, causing it to erupt with an unprecedentedly bright light. With a clear thrum, the Spirit King stabbed out with lightning-like speed. This sword contained an indescribable profoundness. When this sword was unleashed, the world lost its color and the air stopped flowing. Even time seemed to have come to a standstill as ripples appeared in the surrounding space. The Spirit King stabbed the sword into the tunnel at an indiscernible speed, striking the seal on the other side once again. As soon as the iron sword came into contact with the seal, an extremely mysterious power spread out. This power was like a kind of poison. Once it came into contact with the seal, the powerful seal immediately melted at a speed visible to the naked eye. Xiao Ling was shocked when she saw this. She tried her best to maintain the seal, but no matter how hard she tried, she was unable to stop the seal from melting away. Boom! After a few breaths of time, the seal that blocked the exit of the tunnel finally shattered with a loud boom. The entire underground space shook violently. Xiao Ling stared at the shattered seal in a daze. Her face had already become extremely pale and filled with fear. Large droplets of tears rolled out of her eyes uncontrollably before she began to sob loudly. She cried out, "It's over, it's over. The seal has been broken. The seal has been broken. Master, where are you? Come back quickly. The seal has been broken. The seal has been broken." What should Xiao Ling do? The moment the seal was broken, Mercenary City on the ground also suffered the most violent impact. Large chunks of the ground caved in, and the crisscrossing cracks on the ground expanded to a meter wide. All the buildings in the city collapsed, and even the statue of Mo Tianyun in the center of the city fell down. All the experts of Mercenary City, including the experts from various other places, watched the tragedy unfold with sunken faces. At that moment, no one felt happy. Even the protector clans that had been extremely envious of Mercenary City for possessing a saint emperor. This was because Tianjian had already told all the experts of the Holy Emperor about the world of forsaken saints from Jianqin during this time. If it were any other time, they definitely would not have believed such a bizarre matter. But what happened to Mercenary City was the best proof without a doubt. They had no choice but to believe it. If the seal of the world of forsaken saints really had been broken, and the experts of the world of forsaken saints invaded the Tianyuan continent, how would the Tianyuan continent be able to stop them with their measly strength? It would definitely be a great disaster for the Tianyuan continent. The disaster might even affect the entire world. The dark metal sword had returned to the Spirit King's side in the world of forsaken saints. It hovered silently beside him. The Spirit King stared at the tunnel before him and finally smiled in relief. "Spirit King, may I ask if the seal on the other side has been broken?" the enchanting woman nervously asked. The Spirit King slowly turned around. He was a man who seemed to be in his 30s. He was not handsome at all and seemed extremely ordinary. His eyebrows were like swords, giving off a sense of sharpness. His face was resolute, as if he had gone through a lot of hardships. "I've already broken the seal on the other side, but the tunnel has become extremely unstable after I forcefully attacked it a few times. It's filled with chaotic streams of space, so it's impossible to pass through. We can only let people pass through once the tunnel stabilizes," said the Spirit King. The Origin Realm experts immediately rejoiced when they heard that. An old man at Returnance excitedly said, "The Spirit King really is the hope of our world of forsaken saints. You've actually accomplished what we've been unable to do for so many years all by yourself. Over 200,000 years ago, our world of forsaken saints gave birth to 5 reciprocity Spirit Kings, but they were unable to break through the seal even when they worked together. Yet now, the Spirit King has suppressed the combined might of the 5 Spirit Kings all by himself. The Spirit King is without a doubt the strongest expert in the history of our world of forsaken saints. The Spirit King was unmoved by the old man's compliment. He remained as indifferent as before and said, "If Origin Realm experts enter the tunnel, they'll place a lot of pressure on the tunnel. Only when the tunnel has completely stabilized and then reinforced can they pass through. However, there's no such restriction for those below the Origin Realm. They only need to wait for the chaotic streams of space to calm down before they can enter. The weaker they are, the safer they'll be. Leave one person here to guard the tunnel. When the time comes, send a few people over to investigate the situation. Don't forget our objective." "Yes, Spirit King," the Origin Realm experts replied in unison. Chapter 2105. Jianqin hesitated. He was hesitating over whether he should charge up and take the Een Hellstone first. The Een Hellstone was just too important to him. It was a material he could not lack for the Azulite swords. The value of the Een Hellstone had far exceeded the value of the amethyst spiritual bamboo and the mortal energy fruit. Just as Jianqin was hesitating, the ground began to tremble rhythmically. A powerful presence appeared up ahead, and just the presence was enough to suffocate Jianqin. Jianqin was surprised. He carefully erased his presence and silently retreated. He only stopped when he reached a distance he believed to be safe, although he was unable to see the Xianhuang beast due to the cover of the forest. He knew that it was definitely a guardian beast that guarded the mortal energy fruit and amethyst spiritual bamboo. Jianqin did not retreat too far. He was only around 20 kilometers away from the Een Hellstone. It was impossible for him to hide from an Origin Realm expert at such a close distance. However, these were Xianhuang beasts that did not possess any secret techniques or intelligence, which was why Jianqin was bold enough to remain 20 kilometers away from the Origin Realm Xianhuang beast. Jianqin climbed up a tree silently like a snake and looked ahead. He saw an elephant-like Xianhuang beast walking over from afar, heading in the direction of the mortal energy fruit and amethyst spiritual bamboo. The elephant-like Xianhuang beast was extremely large, standing over 30 meters tall. It had 2 horns on its head, but it did not have tusks or a long nose. Its mouth was triangular, revealing 3 rows of sharp teeth that flickered with a cold light. This should be the Class 10 Xianhuang beast guarding this place. Its strength has reached late Heavenly Immortal or even peak Heavenly Immortal. It's even more powerful than the python I encountered a few days ago. Jianqin lay on a tree 20 kilometers away as he silently stared at the Xianhuang beast. Although he was very far away, there were not many obstructions in his line of sight since he was hiding in a high place. As a result, he could clearly see the Xianhuang beast. Jianqin discovered that the Xianhuang beast had crouched down beside the mortal energy fruit. It opened its mouth and sucked in a visible amount of energy from the fruit. The Xianhuang beast was covered in countless wounds of various sizes. Every single one of them was vicious and extremely deep. Even its head had a few large wounds. This Xianhuang beast went through a battle recently and is heavily injured. Jianqin's eyes immediately lit up at the sight of this. If the Xianhuang beast was heavily injured, its strength would definitely not be comparable to when it was at its peak. Although the Xianhuang beast had reached late Heavenly Immortal, or even peak Heavenly Immortal, it was no longer at its peak. At the same time, there were many vicious wounds on its body. It was completely possible to use these wounds as an opening to destroy the insides of its body, other than their great strength, which allowed them to rival Origin Realm experts. Class 10 Xianhuang beasts also possessed a great advantage in terms of defense. Under normal circumstances, only experts on the same level as Xianhuang beasts could break through their defenses and injure them. However, once they lost this advantage, even weaker existences could still injure them. After discovering that the Xianhuang beast was heavily injured, the flames of hope reignited in Jianqin's heart. At that moment, an extremely bold idea appeared in his head, which was to kill the Xianhuang beast. With my current strength, killing this Xianhuang beast will probably be a certain amount of difficulty, Jianqin thought. Jianchen secretly assessed the difference in strength between him and the Xianhuang beast before frowning again. He had already reached a conclusion. Even if the Xianhuang beast was heavily injured, killing it would still be extremely difficult or even impossible. At this moment, Jianchen's face changed. A sliver of joy appeared on his face. He immediately descended from the tree and silently retreated several dozen kilometers. Only when he returned to the foot of the elemental mountains did he stop. With a thought, the saint artifact flew out from between his eyebrows with a dazzling golden light. With a flash, a 3-meter-tall Taita appeared beside him. Not only had Taita's presence become even more powerful, but even his skin had become even more dazzling. He seemed to radiate with endless golden light, making him seem like a golden giant. Jianchen, I should be able to deal with Class 9 Xianhuang beasts now, so I've come out of seclusion to kill them with you. That way, we'll be able to obtain even more Class 9 monster cores, Taita said with a muffled voice. He directly referred to the energy crystals in the Xianhuang beasts as monster cores. Jianchen secretly rejoiced inside when he sensed Ta's great confidence. He was just about to deal with a heavily injured Class 10 Xianhuang beast when he was worried about his lack of strength. He never thought that Taita would come out of seclusion at a time like this, making up for his lack of strength. Although Taita had yet to become a Holy Emperor, he had reached the 8th heavenly layer of the Holy Emperor after a period of seclusion. Coupled with his mysteries of war, he would definitely be able to kill Class 9 Xianhuang beasts with ease. Even if he faced a heavily injured Class 10 Xianhuang beast, he would still be able to put up a fight. Taita, there's a heavily injured Class 10 Xianhuang beast up ahead. The 2 heavenly resources it's guarding are both extremely valuable, and one of them is extremely important to me. I have to obtain it no matter what. Do you have the confidence to kill it with me? Jianchen said to Taita. His eyes were filled with battle intent. Taita's eyes lit up as he stared at Jianchen in interest. He asked with burning interest, "A Class 10 Xianhuang beast? Doesn't that mean it's an existence that surpasses the Holy Emperor? If we kill it, won't we get a Class 10 monster core?" Although Taita's strength was impressive, his knowledge was very limited. Let alone Class 10 monster cores, even Class 9 monster cores were legendary items to him. Only after he came to the Xianhuang microcosm did he truly see a Class 9 monster core, and it was not even a monster core. Instead, it was an energy crystal condensed within a Class 9 Xianhuang beast. That's right, Jianchen nodded firmly. Jianchen, I'll listen to your arrangements. If you think the 2 of us can defeat it, let's fight the Class 10 Xianhuang beast. We'll kill it if we can, Taita immediately said. He also knew that he was nowhere near as intelligent as Jianchen, so he just let Jianchen make the decision. Afterward, he rubbed his hands excitedly and murmured, "A Class 10 monster core. I've never heard of one on the Tianyuan continent. I wonder how much it's worth." Jianchen secretly shook his head as he listened to Taita's murmur. He bitterly smiled. On the Tianyuan continent, only an extremely small number of Class 7 monster cores would appear in large auctions. Class 8 and 9 monster cores would never appear on the market, let alone Class 10 monster cores. Taita, the Xianhuang beast, is already heavily injured. Its strength has been greatly reduced, so we need to act as soon as possible. Otherwise, it'll recover slightly with each passing moment, and dealing with it will become even more difficult. Let's discuss how to deal with the Class 10 Xianhuang beast right now. Jianchen quickly explained the method of dealing with Class 10 Xianhuang beasts to Taita. It was impossible to kill a Class 10 Xianhuang beast in a head-on clash. The Xianhuang beast lay on the ground beside the mortal energy fruit tree in an extremely weak manner. It constantly absorbed the energy from the tree to heal. It was haggard and seemed sickly. Clearly, it was heavily injured. Suddenly, Its half-closed eyes abruptly opened. Although its eyes were filled with exhaustion, they were incomparably sharp and fierce. It opened its mouth and let out a deafening roar. It struggled to stand up from the ground, but it was extremely strenuous. A dazzling golden light flickered in the forest. Tai Ta appeared before the Xianhuang beast like he had teleported. He shone brightly as supreme battle intent radiated from him, condensing into the golden axe above his head. Mysteries of war, destruction. Tai Ta bellowed out. The axe above his head shone with a dazzling light as it swung down at the deepest wound on the Xianhuang beast's head with lightning-like speed. Spurt. Blood immediately sprayed into the air. Tai Ta's strike had caused the vicious wound on the Xianhuang beast's head to become even larger. It was so painful that the Xianhuang beast cried out. At this moment, the Xianhuang beast finally stood up with great difficulty. It immediately raised a huge foot and stomped down on Tai Ta. The sole of the foot flickered with an earthen yellow light, covering an area 3 meters in diameter. It just happened to envelop Tai Ta. Tai Ta immediately felt his body sink as his feet sank into the ground. At that moment, he felt like his body had suddenly become countless times heavier. Just raising his hand required over 10 times more strength than usual, so his movements became abnormally sluggish. Mysteries of war, celestial pursuit. Tai Ta bellowed out and used the celestial pursuit to leave the region enveloped by the yellow light. As soon as he left the region, he immediately felt lighter. The gravity the Xianhuang beast exerted on him had vanished. Boom! At the same time, the Xianhuang beast viciously stomped down with its foot. Not only did it fail to create a deep hole in the ground with its seemingly heavy foot, it did not even leave behind a mark. However, it produced a heavy sound, causing the ground to violently shake. Tai Ta became extremely stern. He knew that the Xianhuang beast stomp was not as simple as it seemed on the surface. It contained other mysteries. If he was struck by the stomp, he would probably be reduced to pieces, even with his body of the war god.